to go get your hair fixed.
Do I need to?
No, you don't. Lori, are you all set?
Yeah.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Selectmen for December 4th, 2018. The time officially is 7:05, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. In particular, I'd like to have an acceptance of our agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Canfield. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good evening. Our first item happens to be walk-ins at 7:05. Are there any walk-ins? Yes, please.
Move the question.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very well done.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And good evening.
Good evening, Ann Burbine, 10 Pennycrest Road. I'm here as a merchant in North Situate just to give you a little bit of an update. First, we're having a Christmas in the village the 14th from 4 to 7. I got the application in, but whatever. But also to let you know that North Situate is turning into a ghost village. The bank is gone. Live Fit, because of a fire a month ago, will not be back. That's the workout place that's right next to the bank. The bank. Wilbur's is closing as of today for the season, but who knows whether or not they will be back.
Because they don't typically close for the season.
No, they don't, but they are closing as of today. We thought that they would be around for this Christmas stroll next week, but no. It's just, with the bank gone, with Jamie's gone, we've lost our two big anchors up there. Our streetscapes looks like who did it and left. We're missing a lantern. Things need to be, it needs to be spiffed up. And as a former person on the Streetscapes Committee, to have found out a number of years ago that the last $250,000 that we had in streetscapes went to a sidewalk on Stockbridge Road, which, go figure. So, and that, I'm telling you all of this because I hope, this isn't about 3 property owners or 5 property owners. This is about all of the merchants in North Situate that are trying to make a living. And because the anchors are gone, believe it or not, business is down. I know one that's down 15%. That's a lot. And it's not that, and the bank claims that, there was no parking and because everybody's going to online banking. No. I talked to a vice president in charge of retail the other day, and he said, well, what can we do? I said, put in an ATM. Do something. We have nothing. We used to have 2 banks in North Situate, now we have less than nothing. So I'm just informing you, I don't know what you can do or what you will do. Sewer notwithstanding, how can we make the place look better? How can we have it maintained better? Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just to your point, Ann, I just want to make sure that we are working on a plan for sewer that obviously is going to take some time. And so, the question really is the short term being, well, immediacy, which is now. If there's anything the town can do for its property to maintain, that's certainly something we can try to do and put as a priority. Obviously, the property owners need to help in trying to preserve by making it affordable for businesses to stay. Hopefully, they will do that, because otherwise they're not going to have rental space. They're going to have a lot of rental space without tenants. And I think, if we're able to work this partnership with Hull and Cohasset and Hingham, primarily, Hingham's not really going to be a part of it, but through Hull and Cohasset, that it will help the North Village. If there was an ability for us to consider immediately utilizing the plant right now, that would certainly be something the board would be discussing. But we can't right yet, given our capacity. Obviously, the immediacy is of great concern because businesses are leaving. One of the easiest things to do as a landlord is to reduce your rates to keep your tenants. Otherwise, you're not going to generate anything. And if I'd like to hope that maybe some of those landowners would consider reducing their rates to try to keep you.
Keep in mind, John, that two of people that were there were burned out.
Right.
Okay, so that, and then the bank, for whatever reason, economically, et cetera, they're gone.
Is there a fire at the fifth place?
So it's beyond our control.
And the same with the burnings, it's beyond the town's control, because the landlord's gonna decide what they're gonna do with the property or not, but, maybe at some point, it would be a nice discussion to have for a short period when we get through the budget to talk about North Situate, potentially. I can't say we're gonna do it in next meeting, but we need to get through our budget, but maybe that's a discussion we can bring when we're able to get through our budget process, so that people don't think that we're not thinking about North Situate and that we're only focused in other areas.
Well, there is a TOD grant, we'll be looking at zoning, that type of thing,
Right.
from an ABC standpoint.
Yep.
But it's all about how can we survive in the interim.
Correct.
Yeah, my only comment was the sewer is more of a long-term play, but we can do short-term things to help clean up the area. I didn't know if you got together with some of the other commercial people down there and came up with kind of a list of things that you'd like to see happen, like some of the repair work you talked about, and if you could present that to us, I'm sure some of that work can be done, at least to do some of the, smaller, easier stuff, the low-hanging fruit type stuff. I think that's probably within the realm of getting stuff done.
You take care of it, and one of the major things that we need to find a home for is Rusty, who is running around and living in people's basements.
Who?
Frank Warren,
Oh,
our resident homeless person.
All right, well, we need to move on.
Can I make a comment? Henry Ye, 16 Blue Island Road.
Yes.
Just based on the comment you made about the landlord reducing the rent, we took a big chunk out of the couple of stores that we're gonna move out. The Monomono Boutiques, for example, is one of them. So, we're trying to keep them there, and I think the sewer, and it's a big thing. I know it's a long term, but I don't understand, Toll Brothers are developing, and I believe they have sewer.
That's a whole discussion, Mr. Ye,
Right,
that we can get into
why
at the
is it
next meeting.
come to the-
It's because they...
was already there.
It was already there, that's the problem, okay? And I think for people to understand, and what I'm just saying is this, for people to understand, I'm happy to have that discussion so that, it doesn't get misinterpreted with false facts on social media. I'm sorry, just want to make sure people understand
So
that.
I think it's not a long term, it's really short term that we need to solve the Situate problem. Because everybody's waiting, and we also part of the partnership with the Cannon Marketplace. And we reduce the rent there as well as the tenants move out. So we'll try to keep people there, but, like Ann said, we didn't need the town's help.
All right, thank you. Like I said, we'll have a discussion further on that, and hopefully you'd be happy to come, bring your partners and other people. I think that we have a really, be very helpful. All right, moving on. I know we're moving on to 7:10. Jim, the town administrator's report?
Yeah, well, if you want to do that meeting, depending on the time, you can bring the consultant that's been working on the regional salt project to give us updates. Updates real quick, a couple things. Article 13 of the special town meeting, we wanted community choice segregation, authorizing the town administrator to appoint a committee to run that process. So at this point, I've had some people interested. So if people want to apply, the application will be available tomorrow on the website. I'll set up a committee, 5 to 7 people. They'll come back to this board once they get set up to get direction from this board, and then we'll go get the consultant, go out and get the process set up, and then the board approves, or not approves, whatever counts. But first thing they'll do is come back to you and have a discussion with you about exactly what you want.
Community choice segregation.
Okay, that's number one. 2, November 6th was our last meeting where we had a grant update. Since that time, in less than a month, the town has received another $79,410.16 in grant funding from the Commonwealth and Maya. $39,059.16 from the Department of Public Safety for EMD training and training expenses, that's at our dispatch. $5,000 for the Mass Cultural Council for the Scituate Harbor Cultural District marketing materials. Another $8,800 from Fisheries and Wildlife for the pump-out boat. $18,618 from the Department of Industrial Actions for workplace health and safety training. And $79.33 from Maya for workplace safety equipment. That's for the DPW. Some air fans for confined spaces, a magnetic manhole lifter, which I can't wait to get, that just sounds so cool. Some multi-gas detectors and some PPE. So if you're keeping score, since July 1st, the town has received $3,636,726.40 in grants, and for the calendar year 2018, we are now at $5,123,074.40 in grant funding.
That's awesome.
So, congratulations to the staff who did those. It's very good work, obviously, and that's very helpful to our ongoing budget management. Tomorrow, the town will be launching our new GIS system. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be taking down the old People GIS that's on our website and launching a new product. It is much more user-friendly. It is much better looking. It contains more information and is much more accurate in terms of the property lines and where the buildings are situated. That'll go up tomorrow.
Great.
So people will be able to use that, get property information, look at wetlands, layers, and things like that. So that was Bill Sheehan and Steve Wilberg. They did a nice job of that. Go on the website, click online services, GIS. It'll take you right to it.
Will people understand, like, is it under the assessors tab, or?
So if you click on a parcel, it will give you a menu that will include the assessor's information on it. You get the assessor's card,
Yeah,
all the assessor's information, the value of the house, all that stuff.
I'm just, not everybody knows what GIS stands for.
Geographical information.
I understand that.
So it has maps, shows
Right.
buildings, shows streets, shows wetlands, shows,
Can we just, I just want to make sure when you do that, click that, people know what they're clicking on to.
yeah, online services, GIS viewer.
Okay.
Right in. That's pretty good. They did a nice job. When I was
Good
looking
point,
at it
Mark.
for a little bit, really get a lot of information that people find useful.
I'll tell you right now, if Rick Murray were here, he'd be totally ecstatic, because I think this is something that was plugging for since 2007. He kept talking about updating and updating and updating, so I'm gonna look at
And
that.
obviously,
It'll be
there's
good.
There's a public face to it, and then there's layers that we have internally that are not available to the public.
Keep going.
Like soil lines, water lines, and things like that we'll use. But
Wow,
it really
good.
is a much better system than what we have.
Great.
Any-
And finally, I know the board will cover it, but congratulations to the football team on their Super Bowl victory. I'm just pleased to announce that a local celebrity is following me on Twitter, because Will Shesky liked my tweet about the Super Bowl winning series. It's nice to know someone important is actually following me on Twitter. So congratulations to the football team.
Questions from the board for town administrator? All right, seeing none, then let's move on to our scheduled items. The first is a 7:15 public hearing, discussion vote, tax classification hearing with Chairman Stephen Gard from the Board of Assessors.
Thank you,
Steve, how are
everyone.
ya?
Good evening.
Good to see you.
By way of clarification, I'm not the chairman this year.
Ah.
We kind of switched that responsibility from year to year to share in the
So you're
glory of
increasing,
such a prestigious
you're increasing the
designation.
tax rate then. The chairman sent you for that reason.
Exactly. So this is our annual meeting to have the discussion on whether the town of Scituate will elect to have one tax rate or two tax rates, one for the residential property and one for the commercial property. Cities and towns that are certified as assessing property at full and fair cash value may elect to shift that tax burden among the majority property classes within certain limits established by the law. The adoption of different rates does not change the total property level, rather it determines the share of the total level to be borne by each class, such as residential, open space, commercial, and industrial. So the town of Situate's tax base has remained unchanged from last year at 96% residential and 4% commercial. We always provide the board with the analysis of a 10% shift from the residential to the commercial. A 10% shift would mean that the average residential tax bill would go down by $34, and it would shift that burden to the average commercial tax bill for $1,076. So the Board of Assessors voted unanimously to have a single rate, With respect to the area towns, Scituate is still the lowest commercial rate. The only one that ties us is Duxbury, and I think we kind of beat them because our rate is actually just slightly under 4. We just use 4, it's like 3.9. So we're still in that, sort of in line with the single tax rate for both. Our demographics for commercial property has not changed. It's still primarily mom and pop businesses that most of the people live in town that run these businesses. So it was felt by the board that there should be no change in the single tax rate recommendation.
Questions from the board? John?
Thank you for explaining that so nicely.
My pleasure.
My only observation is, we heard from Ann Burbine talking about, for people who are watching and listening, businesses are obviously, some of them are floundering in various parts of the town. Some may be actually, in some areas may be actually doing better. But it just signifies that, if you begin to put the burden, increasing the tax rate for the businesses, given that we're at 4% or less than 4%, as compared to some of the surrounding towns. I looked at Hanover. They're the only one in the surrounding towns that have a different rate, and their percentage is, I guess you could say, it's a 15% is what they have for business. If you look at Cohasset, they only have 7% as compared, 7% of the total is business, the remaining 93 is residential. Plymouth, which I was I'm struck, is that they're 20% of their revenue is generated by business, and 80% is residential, but they still have a single rate. They don't create a different rate with their businesses. One would think they might, in order to kind of give some relief to their taxpayers, the residential taxpayers. So that's the conundrum we have, is that trying to create a different rate for businesses, you're going to probably reduce potentially some of the business for some people, or they're going to be paying a lot more. And as you say, we are the lowest by comparison. Norwell, they're at 14% versus 86%.
Right.
So they have a lot above, obviously 53, but they have a lot of business generated. Pembroke has 13 business as compared. Marshfield, I was stunned, only has 8%. The remaining is 92 is residential. I would have thought Marshfield would have had more with 139, but they don't. And I think that's because Pembroke takes, we think it's Marshfield, but it's actually,
really Pembroke,
it's
correct.
Pembroke.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, Mr. Chairman, that, and it's apropos that you had the discussion about the North Scituate Village, and that is a consideration of the Board of Assessors when we do this analysis, and that, to encourage businesses to come to town, to help them stay in town, to help them survive and employ people who live in our town. We think this is an important component part to their financial picture.
Maura?
Yeah, thank you. Steve, do businesses ever approach you during this process? Do they come into the Board of Assessors meetings and speak to you? Just because I've read some commentary that they feel that we're not, being respectful to them, and I think we are with regards to, a consistent tax rate and trying to do everything that we can. So I was just curious if business owners do come in and speak with you about this.
So interesting you should mention that. Generally, business owners don't come in, but we did have a broker come in recently and asked if we were going to have a single rate or a split rate, because they have a client that's looking to move into town and purchase commercial property. So it's all coming full circle. So so people look at this and they watch this, and this is not something that goes unnoticed. The businesses consider this when they're approaching a town that they may want to settle in. So I applaud the town for taking this seriously, because we got to do whatever we can to help the businesses in this town. We don't have a box store, we don't have a Walmart where we can kind of, get away with it. We can't. These people are our friends and our neighbors that run businesses, and they need the help. So, but to your point, it is absolutely does not go unnoticed. People pay attention to this particular aspect of their tax bill.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. You done? Oh. Yeah, Steve, that's all true. I mean, I've done it for 12 years. It makes a lot of sense. It's just not proportional in terms of what the small business would take a hit as compared to the resident.
Right.
But we also have a long-term problem to pay for a lot of projects in town, and, the commercial aspect of our tax base is probably part of the solution. And I don't know what the law is as well as you. Is there any way to kind of have districts in different areas of tax rates, or is it broad-based across the whole town in terms of you're either commercial or you're residential, you couldn't take one section of town and say, you know, because we have some bigger developments coming in at the MBTA lot, and we have other areas that people may think about developing
Right.
that could host a, you know, a bigger, commercial
Share.
base.
Sure, yeah.
And not burden the small business people on Front Street in North Situate, as opposed to if you really had a real commercial entity that had more deep pockets to pay higher rates.
Yeah, I think the only split you could make in that regard wouldn't be by district. It could be by district, but it's commercial and industrial. You could have a separate rate for those, but I can't say for sure. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah, that'd
And I
be
could-
interesting to
Sure.
figure out, because it is part of the overall solution in terms of all the things that we've been talking about for the last several months, water, fields, we're gonna talk about in a minute, schools, all that sort of stuff. You know, it's tough to sustain that on the property taxes of the individual's houses, so.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that if we are creeping, you know, ever so slowly, the commercial tax base does go up a little bit. It doesn't look like it this year because the number stayed under 4, but it's really at 4. But it does go up a teeny bit each year. I think that, Tony, I think that would be an appropriate discussion, depending on what kind of commercial and industrial businesses we had that we were looking at. If you have a bunch of industrial businesses that are still at mom and pop welding shop or whatever, I think it becomes difficult to, when you do that 10% shift and the residential taxpayer saves $30 and then you're whacking these guys $1,000. So to me,
Right.
there's a
Well,
disparity.
that's my point, but you've got a big development in the MBTA parking lot, there was gonna be a hotel there, there was gonna be a lot of
Absolutely.
things that could sustain something a little bit higher, as well as if you had a huge apartment complex going in on 3A, you know, there are bigger entities coming in that could maybe foot the bill a little bit more than, you know, like you said, a small restaurant or a pizza shop or a, you know, a drape store, something like that.
So maybe next year, if these developments take place and they're in process, we'll have a different discussion next year about
Yeah,
it.
if
We'll
you can
bring
just,
that up. Sure.
if you could just bring us the options, I don't know,
Absolutely.
I don't know the law as well as you, but.
I
We
think-
absolutely would
I think
provide you with an analysis.
If you could, because my understanding is it's not, you can't bifurcate it within a certain district. If the district is industrial, you can have a desperate rate compared to the industrial, to the residential, to the business, to the open space. But if you were able to your point, then you could say what area is more successful. Because if Greenbush is doing great,
Yeah, you can't do
you
that.
wouldn't want to do it to Humrock,
Right.
because Humrock is gonna probably be dead.
Right.
Right.
And then the next one would be North Situate.
Yeah.
And then you get tough, you know, but it'd be interesting to see if you can. I don't think you can, but I'd love to hear back from you,
Yeah,
Steve.
we would come up, we can look at that analysis next year if we have a base that we think may be appropriate for a different rate. But
Questions from the audience? Anyone? Okay, how about a motion, if somebody doesn't mind?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the residential factor according to Mass General Law, Chapter 58, Section 1A.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
factor
Steve,
of 1, thank you very much. folks.
Thank you very
Enjoy.
much.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on now to a 7:25 presentation, Scituate High School Restoration Project. Maura Glancy, our Director of Scituate Recreation. Mark Novak, a design principal of Activitas Company. Did I say that right, Mark? And I know we have the athletic director, Bill Louette, who I saved to last. Figure I'd let you guys set up. But I want Mr. Louette to understand that we would like to have the coaches who can make it and players who are capable of making it at our next meeting. We'd like to have them come in. I would have had them come in today, but given the shortness and our agenda had been posted for the open meeting law, so that's the only reason why I couldn't necessarily change it. But congratulations to you, to the football team, the cheerleaders, the players, the band, everybody who was involved, from top to parents. I mean, everyone who was involved. It was quite a town event that I just, kudos from the board. It was just phenomenal. It's great for the town.
I was just going to say the community too. The MIA sent a note to me thanking me, saying that we did have the most attended community there.
Yeah.
And they were very happy about it and respectful and really enjoyed the day.
Did they give you an idea of the numbers?
They can't because it's not separated by tickets.
I was curious.
So, but they could tell just by being on the field We went well past the band section, which was usually closed, but they did have to open that section up.
Yeah, it looked
And,
like half the town was there.
Exactly.
Pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
It was awesome. Great event.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Maura, good evening.
Good evening, how
What
are
do
you?
we have before us so everybody can understand?
Back in April, the town voted to have us have a plan put together on the athletic fields in town, and we hired activists, and this is Mark Novak, and he has been working diligently on putting the plan together. We have come to an area now that we want to present it to you to let you see how we're progressing on this. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark Novak and let him present.
Before he does, I just want to say Mark is a resident, and he was there at the game with his kids and his wife, because I ran into him at one of the restaurants prior to, getting some food and lunch, and so, well, thank you for attending the game. I hope you enjoyed, your family did.
It was
so.
great.
Good.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having us tonight. What I plan to do is give you a very brief presentation of where the plans for the Scituate Track and Athletic Fields Restoration Project currently stand. So as Maura mentioned, we've been hard at work over the past couple of months working on the design for the proposed track and athletic fields. We started by establishing a small working group of people that comprise both members of the Recreation Committee, also various youth sports in town, and also a member from the school board. They helped guide us through the initial phases of developing scope for the project, et cetera. So I think you all are aware of some of the challenges that we currently face in town with our athletic fields. With respect to the site behind the high school and the middle school, there are some unique challenges that we face there. One of them is some challenges with gender equity or Title IX. Softball is currently played down at Central Fields, so female athletes have to travel approximately 1.4 miles from the high school to get to their playing facility, where male athletes playing baseball, the equivalent sport, just walk out the back of the middle school gym. There is also some challenges now related to field hockey. Field hockey is one of the fastest growing sports in Scituate, and currently the field that was designated for field hockey is the Cushing Field, which we all know has challenges due to water restrictions and the inability to irrigate that field. And in fact, the MIAA recently stated that that field should no longer be used for field hockey until it is fixed. So that's one of the challenges that we are attempting to address in the design of the facility. Another one of them is the existing track. So we all know the synthetic turf field inside of the track has seen better days. It's reached the end of its useful life. In areas like the lacrosse creases and the heavily used areas, patches of turf have already been replaced. And there's also a lot of UV degradation on the surface of the field. So the sun is actually one of the biggest enemies of synthetic turf, especially with older generations of turf. They did not have UV inhibitors in them. So you can see in the image on the upper left-hand corner, all the areas of white lines or numbers on the surface of the field have been eaten by the sun. So if you were to roll a lacrosse ball or a field hockey ball across the surface of that field, the minute it would hit a white line or a number, the ball would jump up in the air because it is depressed by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in areas. Also, if you rub your hand on the surface of the field, turn your hand over, there's a good chance that your hand is going to be full of fibers. And that's because the fibers are starting to either break off from the backing or actually pull right out of the backing, again, because the turf has reached the end of its useful life. Now, the Recreation Commission has been approved for funds in the amount of $445,000 to replace the synthetic turf field. However, replacing the field as it is now doesn't make a lot of sense because our existing track is non-regulation. There is approximately a 2-foot grade differential from the north end of the track to the southern end of the track. Last year, the high school held 1 track meet on the field, and there's no plans to hold any additional track meets on the field. 1, because it's non-regulation, and 2, because it's not safe. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a condition that is fairly typical around the entire track. The surfacing is becoming delaminated from the asphalt base underneath, and it's creating potholes, cracks all the way around the surface of the track. A majority of the issues are located in the first couple lanes, which isn't exactly surprising because that's where most of the use happens, not only from track meets, but from the community who use the track for walking. Moving on, some of the other challenges that we face with the existing site are code issues with the spectator seating areas in the press box. The seating, I don't have an image of it here, but it's not exactly safe. It's old. It does not have any closed decking underneath. It would be very easy for a small child to fall through the seating down to the ground below. And it's not entirely accessible. So the press box right now has no handicap access, which leads me into the next point of accessibility issues throughout the entire complex. Even walking in the current ticket booth for the football field, the pitch of the walkway there is currently above the appropriate grades for handicap accessibility. Some of the parking spaces adjacent to the ticket booth also do not meet handicap accessibility. The bleachers behind the baseball field are not accessible by someone with accessibility needs. The team areas are not accessible. So that is something that, with the new plan, will be creating universal access throughout the entire site. And then finally, just the overall challenge that the town of Scituate faces, as Mr. Chairman mentioned. I am a resident. I live at 7 Nelson Road. I have 2 small children who are fairly involved with athletics in town. I coach on a number of the fields in town, from Central to Hatherley to Jenkins, and also at the high school. And the conditions of the fields in town are, for the lack of a better word, embarrassing. And it's not because there isn't good effort put into maintaining the fields. I think it's really due to use. So in 2016, the Recreation Commission had a subcommittee that looked at field use in town. And with the numbers in 2016, assuming that each field had at least 250 hours of use during the course of a year, they did an analysis, and it came back that we are short by 16.67 regulation-sized fields in town.
16?
Yeah, 16 field deficit. So with the addition of 3 synthetic fields in the proposed design, we're starting to chip away with it, and we're chip away at that number, and we're not looking at reducing it from 16 to 13. When you add a synthetic turf field with lights, you're effectively gaining 3 natural grass fields because of the amount of use that you can put on them. All right? So we already have a synthetic field inside of the track, so let's take that out of the equation. When we add 2 new synthetic fields at the baseball field and a future softball field, we're effectively gaining 6 more fields. Okay? You know, and everyone knows the issues with the natural grass fields. We have challenges with limited resources for proper cultural maintenance practices. We have water restrictions on an annual basis, so we can't irrigate the fields. And then just the high demand. In addition to the deficit that was explained in the 2016 field use study, they also took a look at expectations in terms of participation rates. And about half of the youth organizations in town are expecting anywhere between a 10 to 25% increase in participation over the next several years. So it's not a problem that's going to be solved by, you know, we have less kids playing sports. We're realizing more and more kids are getting out there and wanting to be active on our fields. And it's something that we need to address, and we need to address quickly. So with that, we are following 3 simple sentences for kind of the goal of the project: equal play, safer recreation, and stronger community. And when I get to the end of this, I'll try to tie it up in a bow and explain how we're addressing those. So this is the current proposed plan for the facility. And if you don't mind, I'm going to put up a board on an easel here. Might be a little bit clearer for presentation purposes. So to orient you to the site, this is the gymnasium, this is the new Performing Arts Center down on the southern portion of the site. Sorry, I'm kind of blocking everyone. I'll move that to the side.
Let me just ask this, Mark. Cam, can you get this on TV? Perfect, thank you.
Can everyone see? All right. So the first thing that is really physically constraining this site are wetlands to the east and to the west. So these white lines are the wetland borders, and then we have the 55 do not disturb, and then the 100-foot wetland buffer. One of the first things that we're doing with this track and field is we're actually rotating it a couple of degrees from its existing orientation. And that is to get the track and field completely out of the 50-foot no disturb buffer of the wetland. Right now, the track is basically built right to the wetland edge. And to avoid any potential environmental impacts to the protected resource area, we're adjusting it slightly. And that actually leads to kind of a positive result in terms of circulation down around the ticket. If you've been to football games this year down at the stadium, where we've had some really great turnouts because we had an amazing football team, it gets really congested around the ticket booth and around the concession area. And that's just because the track and the ticket booth, there's not a lot of space in between the two. By rotating it slightly, it kicks the bottom portion, the southern portion of the track, over towards the woods ever so slightly, and creates a lot more room around the Tim Mahoney ticket booth, the pavilion area, and then where the existing concessions building is, we're proposing a new concessions building with restrooms. That's one of the big requests for the site, was to have restrooms on site. People are tired of using porta potties, and this will go a long way to adding comfort for spectators and visitors. The track will be completely replaced with a urethane track surface. Urethane is by far the best type of track surface out there in terms of how it responds to athletes in varying climatic conditions. It stays the same, the consistency of it is the same if it's cold or if it's warm. The existing track that we have out there now is a latex track, it's a water-based track. So in the winter it's very, very hard, and in the summer it gets soft. And that leads to some of the issues with it breaking down over time. This track urethane, you can expect it to last around 15 years before you need to give it a kind of a facelift, and that's just respraying it with a new coat of paint and then restriping it. We are also redoing the D areas. The D areas is the area around the curve of the track where it meets the end of the synthetic turf field. Right now it's all natural grass and it's really unusable for any kind of sport. We're proposing to make that all resilient track surfacing so athletes can, especially track athletes, they can stretch out. You can have the high jump in there, the long and triple jump will be in there, and also the discus will be thrown from the corner. We're proposing a new bleacher system that will be code compliant and accessibility, full accessibility to bleacher seats with companion seats for wheelchair accessible seats. We'll have a handicapped lift to a new press box. We're proposing approximately 1,000 seats on the home side and upwards of 300 semi-portable seats on the visitor side. We will include some new storage to the northern end of the track. Storage is a big thing on site. There's a bunch of Connex trailers all over the site, and they're not the most aesthetically pleasing elements on an athletic site. So we will be putting in some new storage structures with rolling doors to allow for the storage of physical education equipment, football equipment, track equipment, etc. We will, as I mentioned, we will be maintaining the existing Tim Mahoney building. I've had conversations with the Mahoney family about that. They're very excited about the project, and they're happy that we can continue to use the building that was dedicated in my son's honor. Moving over to the baseball field. The baseball field is, home plate is currently about in this location. We're completely reorienting the baseball field, purely for solar orientation. The orientation of the existing field is one of the worst orientations for baseball that you can have. And it's really a safety thing because the sun is shining in the athlete's eyes. So we're moving it into a north-northeast orientation, which is the ideal orientation for a baseball, softball field in the northeast. And we're also expanding the facility. Right now, you have very short porches. Center field is only about 350 feet away. So we're expanding this to be a much larger facility that will meet more of the MIAA recommendations. The entire facility will be synthetic turf, including the infield area, the pitcher's mound, and the home plate area. By doing everything in synthetic turf, it allows us to overlay a number of different fields to create a multi-purpose facility in this location. We'll have new spectator seating areas, team areas, bullpens where pitchers can warm up. One of the bullpens will be a batting cage for baseball use. And then we will have additional storage area. So when this field is being used for baseball, you need a place to put your soccer goals, your lacrosse goals, your field hockey goals. You can roll them off the field and put them into a pen located in this area right here. Moving over to softball. Softball will be located on the eastern side of the site. The softball field here is oriented in a south-southwest orientation, which is also a good orientation for baseball and softball. It's the exact opposite of baseball, so we're in good shape there. This begins to address some of the Title IX challenges that we have. It'll also be multi-purpose. It'll support football, not only for the JV football program at the high school, but for cycle football, flag football, a lot of the youth sports. Both of these fields will fit full-size regulation fields, both lacrosse, soccer, etc. All the facilities will be completely enclosed with chain link fencing, netting systems for ball control, and backstops for baseball and softball. All three facilities are proposed to have a new lighting system. We're currently looking at the latest in sports lighting technology, an LED sports lighting system, which is extremely energy efficient in comparison to previous sports lighting technology. And not only is it energy efficient, but in terms of its spill and glare control, it's excellent. So it really creates an umbrella of light that shines down on the field and limits any impacts to surrounding areas. The existing ropes course will be maintained. That is a big element for the school's physical education program. I met with Greg Ranieri last week from the physical education department, and we actually had a conversation with Project Adventure. They're the people that come out and inspect that on an annual basis, and they are good with everything that we're proposing. We're actually proposing to remove all the natural grass that is in between all the guy wires, the poles, and replace it with playground wood chips to ease some of the maintenance in and around that area. Never had to mow over there, but I imagine DPW hates going out there to mow around all those areas. The other thing that we're proposing here is to fence off the entire area, so younger kids are not going and playing on those poles and some of the obstacles when they shouldn't be. One of the really neat aspects of this entire design is when we construct synthetic turf fields, you have to remove all the topsoil that's underneath them. So you're basically building these fields on top of a parking lot base that can drain, all right? So you need to remove all the organic material because over time that'll compress and you'll get dips and weaves in the carpet. Out here we have anywhere, we're about to do geotechnical investigations, subsurface investigations starting tomorrow. But the existing information that we have out there shows that we have anywhere between 12 inches to 18 inches of topsoil. So we're looking at a tremendous stockpile of topsoil out there, and how do we use it? We're not going to be able to use it all. We're going to have to get rid of some of it. But the most cost-effective way is to use it on-site in different landforms. We have a big slope coming down from the Cushing School to the north. And our proposal is to create some berms that circumnavigate these facilities to create more intimate and unique playing venues. So between baseball and softball, we'll have a finger berm that extends down. If you took the walkway up and around the back of the fields, you'll be elevated approximately 9 feet above the surface of the fields, so it'll provide a nice, smooth slope down to the fields, easily maintained with a mower, but great for throwing out a blanket, watching a game, or just walking around the park. This walkway that circles around both fields is approximately a half-mile long. We propose metering that, so people that want to just stroll around and experience the area from a passive recreation standpoint can know how far they travel when they're walking around. We'll also have some berms over on this side that can be used as informal spectator berms, and again, starts to enclose the site and create 3 distinct and unique venues. I think the other thing from a competition and a game management standpoint, having 3 separate facilities is an easier option to manage on a day-to-day basis. We're not going to be moving around multiple portable fences. It keeps spectators off the surface. And I know when I go to watch my kids, I like to bring a Gatorade with me. I like to bring, a Pepsi or something like that while I'm watching the game. You want to keep all those types of products off the surface of the field. And by keeping spectators on the perimeter, it will help to maintain this investment into Scituate recreation and athletics. One of the things that I failed to mention, the existing lights at baseball were largely donated by the Reedy Family Foundation approximately 5 to 6 years ago. So it's a relatively new lighting system. And we sat down with the Reedy family, I believe last month, right? And had a discussion with them about, their investment out there. And what we're currently proposing to do is to relocate those lights to the natural grass field in the back. So we're not just taking them down and getting rid of them and wasting that investment, we're actually just repurposing them.
And they were okay with that, Mark?
Yes, they were, yep. So that's the quick download on the site plan.
No, way back there.
Just a couple of sections that illustrate what I was talking about in terms of the berming. So on the top section, you can see the slopes coming down. On the left side is the track and field. On the top is that walkway that goes up in between the fields and Cushing. On the bottom section, you can see a couple of berms and a walkway weaving in between the berms with the field on the right side. This is the top one is, again, a section in between the baseball field and Cushing is up to the right. You can see the elevation difference provides a great viewing perspective down to the field. And again, instead of wasting our money by shipping all that topsoil off-site, we're finding the best uses that we can in a limited amount of space. This leads me to cost. So right now, I'll go right to the bottom line. We're at roughly $10 million. The thing that some of you may not know, we started at over $11 million. So we're moving in the right direction. Just to briefly go through all the numbers, mobilization and site preparation were almost 300,000. Earthwork, there's going to be a lot of dirt moved around on the site. We're at 665,000. For the track and D areas, we're at roughly $250,000. Turf inside of the track is at $660,000. And something to keep in mind about that, we have to rebuild the entire field. So previously, we thought we were just going to take up the old carpet and put a new carpet down. The entire field needs to be rebuilt because of that elevation change in the track. So we'll be adding new stone, new drainage, et cetera. Fencing for the track and field portion of the project is $68,000. The baseball and multi-purpose field is just shy of $1 million. Fencing for the baseball field is about $108,000. Softball field and multi-purpose field is $797,000. Fencing associated with that portion of the site is $106,000. Spectator seating and press box right now is at $667,000. Sports lighting and electrical improvements, one of the big items, is $1,640,000. So that's not just lights, that's electricity and improvements, new scoreboards for the baseball multipurpose field, new scoreboard for the softball field, sound systems, et cetera. Utility improvements and structures, $963,000. So that's all the drainage improvements, sewer improvements, water improvements that need to be made on site, and also that the storage buildings and the restroom concession building. And then finally, landscape improvements at roughly $750,000. That's the walkways, planting, site furnishings like trash and recycling receptacles, et cetera. You add in general conditions, overhead and profit, we get to a construction subtotal of roughly $9.5 million. Right now, we're carrying a 10% contingency at just under $1 million. You subtract out the 400, says here 450, but it's actually 445,000. That's already been approved for replacement of the field, and we're at $10 million. So, equal play, safer recreation, and stronger community. Equal play, the design is, let me just go back to the site. Equal play, we're addressing some of the Title IX issues that we're facing by adding softball field out there. One of the questions that I'm sure will be coming up is by having one baseball field, we're getting rid of the JV field. This can be addressed now that we have lights out there, now that it's a extremely durable product and synthetic turf. We can address the JV varsity conundrum with scheduling adjustments, or we could also look at potentially creating a new JV field down at Central in the opposite corner of where the softball field was just built. Safer recreation. All around the site, we're making the entire site ADA accessible, universal access around the site. The fields are going to be much safer because they'll be consistent in all types of climatic conditions. The lighting will be much better on site. The bleachers will be designed to code, so we don't have any fall hazards. Everything will be fenced appropriately. Some of the fencing at the baseball field, I noticed the knuckled selvages on top of the chain link, and they're just pointing up in the air. If somebody was to go back and try to catch a foul ball against the fence, there's a good chance you're going to get a laceration all the way down your arm. So all those items will be addressed. And then finally, stronger community. We're looking at this as a town park rather than just an active recreation park. There'll be elements out here like the walking trail that can be used by the entire community, and we hope it is. Other elements in the plaza area down in between baseball and softball, we're looking at adding some physical stretching equipment and fitness stations, where you can use your body weight. As you're walking around, you do one loop, you do a few exercises on the equipment, and then you do another loop. Just ways to engage a larger percentage of the community in this project. With that, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn my board. Sean?
I had a few. Mark, I'll just do a couple at a time. Does this design cut into the hill much at Cushing School? And what is that, topographically? You had a nice slide, a few down. Was that existing, or was that, if you compare that one and the next one to that one, is that existing, or that's what it would look like? And how much earthwork do you have to do to get it to that?
Yeah, great question. We are cutting into it. So right now, the existing baseball field I mentioned is roughly 300 feet to center field. There's a little bit of area beyond the center field fence before you get to the slope. But we really need to expand that dimension in order to make it a truly multi-purpose field. The other thing is the existing baseball field, you go out past second base into the outfield, and then you get to a point roughly 50 feet from the fence, and you run up a hill to the outfield fence. It goes up about 3 feet in 60 feet. So again, not an ideal situation for any type of playing field. So we will be cutting into that slope.
All right. And you said more than once it would address some of the Title IX issues, not all of them?
No, well, it would.
All right, you said some, and I heard it twice, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, no, because we want, if we're going to do it,
No, absolutely, yeah, it addresses Title IX.
I'll wait, let the others go.
Karen?
Okay, I'll take a couple too. Can you go back to the whole layout? There you go. My biggest questions have to do, it doesn't look like there's been any reconfiguration of parking, and if we're adding 2 more fields and a lot more use, has it been design consideration for that? That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, so there's no additional parking on site. In fact, we're actually eliminating 3 to 4 parking spaces on site. The challenge is there's no space to add parking here unless we're impacting some of the wetlands. I think it comes down to a scheduling item in terms of when and how we're utilizing the facility. So I don't disagree that if there was a performance in the pack and we had all 3 fields running simultaneously, that it would be a challenge to find a parking spot. There is Cushing, so on weekends, if there's a jamboree or something like that, there is overflow parking up at Cushing, and the intent is to maintain that informal connection between Cushing and the high school, middle school site. The intent is not, however, to make that accessible at this time. It's just to kind of repave it and regrade it so that kids can still run back and forth. But, if you had accessibility needs, you would have to commute around.
Did you spend any time looking at the existing space to see if they can be refigured? Was that part of your design work as well? Reconfigured?
One of the things that we initially talked about was if the ropes course moved.
Right.
That could be a spot for additional parking. There might be a way to sneak in a spot or 2 here and there, but in order to gain any real amount of parking and maintain proper circulation around the parking lot, it would impact the field program.
And is there a possible location for that to be relocated?
The rope?
Yeah. It looks like a big area, so.
It is a good-sized area, and it's a fairly costly endeavor.
To move that, okay.
One of the things that was tossed out was potentially over by where the police station is, or used to be. However, the proximity is not exactly ideal in terms of it, to the gymnasium and use for physical education.
One other question, and I'll let the others. Did you mention that there, I thought you said there was going to be natural grass field,
In the back, yeah.
so where is that?
This field back here
Okay.
will remain.
Oh, so like the back end of where Psycho is now?
Correct.
Back,
Yeah.
okay,
They still use that for lacrosse and soccer.
okay.
You can explain why.
No, I think
Ultimate Frisbee,
it's a really
Rugby.
important fact
rugby.
that I hadn't heard the stats before, that, that the turf field investment gives us the benefit of almost six more practical use fields, which I had not heard that before. That was.
It does,
that's
and, if you do
encouraging.
a true cost-benefit analysis, synthetic turf to a maintained natural grass field, and we can't keep up with the maintenance on the natural grass fields in town as it is, but let's assume we could, synthetic turf pays for itself very, very quickly with the amount of use that you can put on it.
And I think where we struggle in the fall right now is really, we only have one field, and that's a practice football field.
Right.
There's no soccer that can be played out there because of the fence of the baseball field. And we really struggle having fields there at all in the fall. And that gives us 2 more fields.
If you'd be curious, I could give you an update on where we stand in terms of schedule.
Hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
Sure.
I want to go down the rest of the board.
No, that's all right. I'll defer.
More?
Thanks. This is great.
Thank you.
Long time coming. Talking about this for 20 years, I think. Of course, a lot of concerns that I have, this is the best rendition, right? This is your A plan.
I think so, yeah. I think it's extremely unique, which I think is an A-plus solution for the town of Scituate. And my company, our philosophy is to design things that have been tried and tested and that will stand the test of time. So, everything that we will be proposing on site will be extremely durable equipment. Everything from the fencing to the walkways, everything.
So sort of where I'm getting at is the cost,
Yes.
right? So you have the A-plus plan, and looking at some of these costs and, knowing your experience with accessibility needs and, as part of the plan also to research from a financial aspect, are there accessibility grants from the state that we can access and that your organization has, experience with helping us to secure that, just as we look to other aspects and partners in town to help us secure other grants, number one, right? And then number two, people are probably more apt to put their name on a field than they are a senior center. So fundraising aspects as well, because honestly, it's the cost right now. I think the plan looks great, but sort of curious as to what type of assistance your company would lend as well with regards to identifying different financial resources.
So we had a good meeting this morning, actually, talking about different funding mechanisms and things that we can do. We will be meeting with the Community Preservation Committee a week from tonight. But in that meeting, we talked about other things. One of them was applying for an ADA grant. It's not a lot of money. It's about $50,000, but every little bit helps. And some of the other things, we've been going to the PTOs of all the schools. So last night I met with the middle school PTO to talk to them about potential fundraising. And we will be hitting up all the elementary schools as well. The challenge for us is we're looking at hopefully getting this on the town meeting agenda. And that's roughly 4 months from now. So trying to fundraise a significant portion of this, I don't know, may not be a problem, but it seems like a short period of time to.
And I know that's not your responsibility, but it's just curious, with
We are
regards to
looking into it.
Your advice. And then I guess my last question, sorry, which is, and I'm sorry, it's really all about financing, because honestly, I know this needs to be done, but we know that's the white elephant, it's not even a white elephant, it's a pretty big elephant in the room. You know, I would ask, you know, where, if through these line items, can we dial it back without compromising? And, you know, has that already been done?
So the opinions of costs that we have generated so far, and I've had this conversation briefly with Tony at our first public meeting. I never generated an opinion of cost where, when we put it out to public bid, I'm fairly certain that the bids are going to come in higher, all right? So there's a certain level of contingency built into those numbers. I fully expect when we put it out to public bid, and we're planning on putting it out to bid in middle of March of this year, so we can have a true number when it comes to town meeting from contractors, that the number is below the opinion of cost that we're showing now. You know, right now, from what we've seen in the market, you know, increases in steel prices and all that kind of stuff, this is the best we can do at the moment. As we continue with the design, we'll continue to refine that number. The contingency, we will actually drop a little bit more. So, you know, next time we're before you, I hope that the number is lower. I can't say considerably lower. You know, I don't think we're going to realize a $2 million saving. But if we keep trending in the right direction, I think we're doing pretty good. You know, I just don't want to show you a number now, and then we put it out to public bid, and it comes back at $12 million, and then nobody looks good.
Okay, and I just have one last question. So knowing that field hockey is at risk with the MIAA and the no use at Cushing, so that's very disappointing to hear. And if we had to phase this project, which I know is not optimal, which field would you designate as your field hockey field? Would it be field 2 in the middle, or over to the left?
Well, currently,
Over far to the left?
If, I think the field hockey field is what he's proposing would be the one where the softball field is.
Right.
Being that it's the opposite sport season that softball is, and it's also the correct size. Right now, they play on the turf field that we have now. The varsity does, as far as 8 games. They have the JV fields that we're playing, a couple of them up at Cushing, correctly?
They played 3/4 of the season up there, but obviously got worn down,
Right. Okay.
so towards the end of the season.
all 3 facilities will easily fit a field hockey field, though.
Right.
Okay.
Tony?
Yeah, there's so many good things in the plan, right? The bathrooms, the bleachers, that are, you know, so many things are just not in good condition at the high school right now. The track is very bad, the pitch itself and just the degrading of the material. The turf football field is, you know, it's lived its life, it needs to be refurbished. You know, the turf fields in general, less maintenance, you know, less cost to maintain it and paying people to do it. I do have a concern about the baseball field. I think we probably have to throw some additional expense in there, because there will have to be another baseball field made somewhere in town. Whether it's at Central, at some other spot, the town needs another full-size baseball field. This one will get quite a lot of work, and I don't think it'll be available for many other sports in the spring with the Little League sports. If you're gonna put a JV game and then a varsity game, and then every night there's just Little League games there, several of them on both fields. So there's gonna be, that middle field, I don't think is gonna be available very often for other sports in the springtime, and I still don't think it'll hit our capacity. So I think something's gonna have to be just put into it, and maybe there'll be a contingency left over from this that could help fund that. The other field isn't used very much, the field on the left. The one thing I did think that there was going to be more feel, and I love the layout of it, I love the walking paths, I love the, the tier, so you can watch it from different venues and stuff. But at one point, we had it so that there were gonna be 3 fields across, and it was really, that was attractive to me, because we were really getting more usage of the space as opposed to kind of the scenic and beautiful thing you've put here. So that was one thought that I had. We currently do have those fields. There's no new field coming on play. Those are all there. There's just not a fence around the baseball field now that you can play other sports on it in the spring and in the summer.
I think one of the things that the previous consultant, when they looked at things from a layout perspective as part of the field study, the 3 fields that they had, 2 of them were field hockey fields, and they are the smallest in terms of area. Also, the wetland boundaries are a lot closer to the existing playing surfaces than initially anticipated. So that's starting to constrain our site as well. And then we started to look at it from just a general game management and maintenance standpoint, and having 3 separate facilities rather than just one large massive piece of turf where balls are running into each other's games. You're going to have to be moving portable fencing in between fields, portable fencing for baseball. Who's going to do all that?
Right. Speaking of fences, is there a fence for the baseball field?
Yes, the entire field is actually surrounded by fence.
No,
It's going
but
to
for
be-
like a home run, how
Yeah,
do you?
so down the lines, it's actually 320 down the right field line and 330 down the left field line, which is MIA, within MIA recommendations. It would be a poke to center field. So it would be over 400 feet to straightaway center field.
So that fencing around that facility is the baseball
It will be,
fencing?
yes.
Wow.
Similar to Plymouth North.
Similar to Yankee Stadium.
We're going to have great pitchers.
So that was one of the questions. And is there no dirt on these fields? Is that all just painted?
It is a different color turf.
Okay.
So that includes the mound and the
Plymouth is
home
that
plate
way.
area.
And that works fine. My kids have played on that, and it's a great, there's one in Weymouth, too.
Libby Field.
Yeah.
We did Libby Field.
Great field.
The south looks just like that also right now.
I'm a little bit questioning the extra use that we'll have. I don't know that, if it says we need 16 fields, I don't know how we're going to get all that out of this space here, but it certainly needs it, and it's better conditions than we have now that the kids are playing. And as Maura mentioned, the cost is a concern with all the other things going on in town with senior center, water,
Yeah.
schools and stuff like that. The only other thing you mentioned that I'd want to comment on is the CPC stuff. And I think you're probably alluding to bonding and having CPC pay that through some sort of a bond. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. In fact, I am sure how I feel about that. So we talked about that over the last decade for a number of projects that may be more important than fields, and that's one thing I think we'd have to vet out a little bit more before. we
And
come
nothing's
back.
been
I
requested
understand
formally or determined yet. We kind of had an informal meeting to just start talking about things. We're going to be on their hearing on the 10th, and basically what we're doing is telling them everything this project is eligible for under CPC. And then we're leaving, they basically authorized the funding for my firm to come in and prepare the design. We're just telling them how much it costs, and we'll take it from
Yeah.
there.
And, our job here is to bang it around and tell you all the thoughts. It's really a beautiful facility. It's needed in the town. It's not the perfect timing for it, not that there ever would be great timing, but it's really hitting all the points that need to be done at that facility. And I think it's great for the high school. I think the high school is going to use it a lot and really help them. And I'm concerned about the town having access to it as much, but it's beautiful.
One of the things that we had also discussed with Jim is developing a memorandum of understanding between the town and the school.
Absolutely.
For
Talk to Ron Griffin about that, determines who gets it, when gets it. That was a key component when Noble did their fields.
Well, there's a chain, as Maura knows, there's a hierarchy now of use of fields. I assume it'll be something along those same.
It kind of happened back in 2004 when we put in the turf. We had something drawn up. Sean, if you remember correctly, you were probably the only one here with me. I do have, that the school more or less uses it during the week, and the youth groups get to use it on weekends. I have a conversation with Bill, if he says anything about that, like, try to stay off on the weekends so the youth groups can come on. And that's our way of making it a community type of field.
And what about, what comes to mind was the groups from out of town for profit.
Right.
And then how would you deal with that? And the same
We
way
don't
we
have
did
that.
before?
Yeah, we don't have much of that in town anymore.
Not yet, no.
Because we're not attractive.
No, but we could, and
Yeah.
when
And
we
that's
talked
something
earlier,
that-
we talked about expense and how much it would be.
It didn't seem like it generated much anyway. It was probably
With the,
push.
if you build a facility such as this, you will get large camps that will want to use this because of the size of the facility, and they can have people at different areas.
Probably a lot in the summertime,
Summer.
You have to set your fees
but that's the
accordingly.
downtime for that.
You get tournaments as well, which a lot of towns use to fund some of this.
Gary Myerson, what's your address?
Good question. 26 Summer Street. Sorry. Sorry, Lorraine.
Chairman of the CPC, so that we can, are there any questions from the audience? Anybody sitting through this, just curious? Yes.
Henry Gay, 60 Woodland Road, Scituate. Couple questions. Are there any additional bathroom facility besides near the football field?
No, the only bathroom
So-
facility is over by the football field,
So
correct?
if we're promoting this as a stronger community facility, and people take a walk up the upper left, they need to go to the bathroom, they have to go all the way around.
There is a potential that we could, and we probably will, have some select areas on site where we will have some portable restrooms. But the only area where we have physically hard plumbing will be, currently, is at the track and field.
And that's open all the time. That will be open all the time if you have.
That's,
You have to figure that out.
that's not for me to
Figure that
determine.
out.
No, but if the wall area is open, I would imagine facility has to be open, right?
I guess it would have hours of being open.
I'm sure there will be. I mean, it's one of these things when they're using the fields for the fall activities and the winter activities. If somebody gets there at 7 in the morning, it's like, geez, I gotta go, I doubt it's gonna be open, because, nobody's gonna be there to open it up at 6. But I'm sure there will be times when, during the public, it will be. It should be, because it beats the Jiffy John that they have over in the corner that's been sitting there for like 3 months and hasn't been picked up, and really stinks by August, so. All right, any other questions? Yes?
Pete Frasca, 38 Aberdeen Drive. Two-part question. Yearly maintenance for the fields, and have you thought about putting a new field up at the Cushing, utilizing that field up there?
So first part, yearly maintenance, is an excellent question. We will actually, as part of the design documents, we are planning on drawing in a clause where the turf vendor, so whoever provides the synthetic turf and installs it, will be required to come back 2 times annually. In my experience, they largely give that away in an effort to get the project.
Annually for how long?
For the lifetime of the warranty, 8 years. And what that does is, if there's ever an issue with the carpet and the town needs to make a warranty claim, they can't say that the town isn't maintaining that field appropriately, because they are out there twice a year performing an inspection and doing a deep cleaning on the surface. Other than that, in terms of maintenance of the carpet itself, equipment will be included, is included in this number right now, to drag and sweep and clean the surface of the field. And really, beyond that, it's just maintaining the the level of infill to keep those fibers standing up. And then in terms of, did we look at Cushing? No, we did not. We were directed, the project site is what we're looking at.
Well, I have some comments, but I think my board's answered a lot. I would suggest that we take a look at Gates Field as, in the event that this is to go forward as a JV baseball field, given that it was the original baseball field, it's the flattest field, and you look at the other side of Central Park or Central Field for replacing the, I guess you could say, Little League or smaller T-ball league side, that would, I think, would be much easier to be dealt with for a short term if this is going to be a solution. Aside from that, I'll leave it at that. Jim, did you want to say something?
One of the big advantages of a facility such as this that they haven't touched on is it allows you to take field hockey off the Cushing field and close it for a growing season, 2 growing seasons, bring that field back, then close the field over here, overseed it, because we play sports on the field in the spring and the fall. We grow grass in the spring and the fall. They don't go together very well. So if you can close a field, and that's just, a facility such as this allows you to move some of those things around, potentially close a field, bring it back, and then move other pieces around. So it does give you some ability to bring some of the fields back. You know, one of the problems with Cushing, we are putting water on it. We'll have water on it in the spring. We'll seed it. We'll take care of it. The girls will go out on it in the field hockey. The kids at the school will be on it. And if they get a rainy day, that grass is really not going to have a whole lot of time to take. So you're going to have to worry about that getting torn back up. But if you can close that for a growing season or 2, that grass is going to last when you put people back on it. So doing something like this gives you that advantage. Just one other thing that they didn't touch on.
That's why I brought Jim tonight.
Well, we've been trying to close a field ever since I started working in recreation. We've been trying to close a field every year, and we can't close it.
Well, let's have that discussion another time. We've got
Okay.
limited time.
You got it.
If it's a quick question, I'm gonna, because I got a whole bunch of people to interview, and if that's not the case, you're one of them, we might not get done till 11, so I need to kind of wrap this up.
Really
Please.
quick question, based on what you're asking.
Name and address, please.
Greg Piasecki, 133 Maple Street.
Thank you.
You may not be able to answer this, but the material at Go Green, the raw material, the organic material, can the town get access to that for free? I was told by someone that that's possible, and the reason I'm even asking this question is related to the Cushing Field. The soil on Cushing Field, I'm no landscape expert, but I'd be hard pressed to grow grass on that. And so the question I have is, do we have access to that organic material or not as a town for free?
You gotta buy it. That's the short answer is no. You gotta buy it.
They lease the space
Yeah.
from the town, and it's their property.
All right. That being said, good luck. I look forward to hearing back from CPC.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And Bill, if you could communicate that, I'd like to have coaches, everybody, every athlete that can. I hope that works for the winter sports. Bring them in first thing, and they want to stay on. Be nice. All right. Seeing that it's almost 8:30, I'd like to get started with our 7:55 discussion, which I believe will be quick, I hope, with Kevin Cafferty, if he's here.
Kevin is not. Sean is next door.
Sean here, so that we can deal with the contract. And then, folks, we're going to get started with the interview shortly after that. So this is a discussion vote for the DPW contract, Old Oak and Bucket, in well number 17A repairs. Sean, good evening, how are you?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
And who do we have here with you?
I have a few members with me from Ty and Bond, the design engineers. Ryan Pavlika.
Yeah.
Michael Schrader, who you know.
Yep, I didn't see
And
mine. All right.
Eric Langland, chief operator
I
at the
recognize
Scituate Treatment
Eric. Eric,
Plant.
how are you?
We're here to award a contract for general contracting services for the repairs at the Old Oak and Bucket Water Treatment Plant. Monies were appropriated at the Fall Town meeting to accommodate the repairs, and we've started to procure components for some of these repairs, and we're looking to award general contracting services for a contractor to oversee the repairs that will take place, as well as perform some of their own
through this contractor.
Mike, good evening.
This contract will incorporate cleaning of the sedimentation basins so that the track vac can be installed, disposal of that material. Ty and Bond will provide an inspection of the basins while they're drained and cleaned.
We're going to look at the wall to make sure that it's not compromised, or if it is, then they're going to assess from
Correct.
there
Yep.
and repair it while it's offline, correct?
Correct.
So that the basins no longer are, they're completely separate, and there's not we believe there may be a crack or a leak in between the two.
Correct.
All right.
Yes, we are getting sediment transport between the two basins. The bulk storage tanks will be replaced as part of this, and that will require removing part of the wall on the treatment plant to remove the tanks and install new ones. Masonry block, dismantling, and put back together, as well as temporary treatment at both wells, or 4 wells, 17A and 18. All of these repairs.
filters?
Yeah, all of
The
these
filters, the
repairs
temporary
require
filters that
the
we're looking at, right?
the plant to come offline.
Yep.
The plant will be shut down for this 3-month period. And in order to compensate for the water that the plant is producing, we're going to put wells 17 and 18 directly into the distribution system. So we'll provide filtration, green sand filtration at well 18 on site. And right now, they're preparing to install the vessels at the treatment plant. So the water that's pumped from 17 typically into the pond and then into the plant will be treated and pumped directly into the distribution system.
And the sand filters are to eradicate and reduce the levels of manganese, so that people are not going to be getting the manganese into the system.
That's what the green sand focuses on removal of, yeah. Also, the sand filter within the plant will be replaced while the plant is down. So not only the sedimentation vacuum or the track vac, you may have heard that word, the sand filter will be replaced. Right now, those cells are losing sand. They're slipping through cracks between the compartments that they're constructed out of. So that'll be taken apart and replaced as well. We did receive a DCAM waiver due to the emergency procurement status, but we did receive 2 quotes. Ty and Bond prepared contract documents, construction specifications on the repairs to be performed. And we actually met with Pride Environmental 2 days ago to discuss their qualifications. They understand the time frame.
So you've had 5 RFPs or just bids? Were they requests for proposals or?
They were
It's a
proposals.
request for proposal.
Anything else?
Just a direct solicitation.
Solicitation. You had 5 people. 1 had a prior commit and didn't do anything. 2 actually said they couldn't meet the schedule. 1 came in for $1.2 million, and then Pride Environmental came in for $874,380, of which is the one that you're saying that you met and talked to?
Correct. Yes, we
They were the
had them
cheapest
in
ones.
earlier this week. They have experience with these products. They can meet the schedule. In fact, they're on site now.
They're on site now.
Yes.
Working as a sub for
Adage.
Adage. So we're getting to see how they operate as well, on a lower scale.
And so we need to review this and approve, hopefully approve it, depending on the board's discussion. And that's what you're here for, with a motion with the, to hire the general contractor for their services to repair the water treatment plant.
Yeah, it's going to be a delicate dance, coordination, having multiple vendors in, repairing their products. Having this GC on site will aid with them if they have problems along the way. He's there to assist them in moving forward due to the time restrictions.
Yeah.
We're looking at.
Questions from my board? Anybody? Sean?
I'll go last.
Just a quick question on the $200,000 contingency. Is that in the $800,000 quote?
Yes, so that may
That
not
is
be
to-
spent.
And that is to repair any breakage of the wall if they find, however bad they find that?
Yep, it's listed as a time and materials contingency for any unknowns once we get into the sedimentation basins.
And this quote from Pride Environmental covers everything that you just said? The green sand filters, it covers the vacuum system, it covers fixing the sand beds.
There will be 2 other contracts issued for the track vac and the sand filter. All of the repairs will be made by them and coordinated with,
Mean
through
for the
these
actual
guys.
equipment.
Right.
We've purchased the equipment, right,
Say that again.
so you
So,
don't know their names better than I do.
right, so this contract is to essentially take care of well 17A, get that sand filter up and running, clean out the sedimentation basins, allowing Ovivo, who manufactures the track vac, to actually come in and replace the track vacs in kind.
So that's not, buying the track vac is not part of
That
this?
is not a part of this contract here.
Okay, keep going.
And during that time, Aqua Aerobics will also be on site to pretty much replace the sand filters as well, which is not a part of this, but will be as a part of the coordination piece associated with this contract. So there will be some coordination between the GC and those other contracts.
So replacing the sand filters on the backside of the water, that's not part of this either?
That is not a part of this contract.
So what is that gonna cost? Those two things, are we gonna stay within our budget of 1.2 million?
Yes. 107 for the track vac replacement.
And then the sand?
And the sand filter,
I think that came in at, yep, there it is right there.
that'll be
132.
98,
132.
because we're under, they've purchased the equipment
purchased it,
already, so
okay,
the install
yep.
is still outstanding at 98.
Okay.
98.
And then we
So
have,
the $875,000 is to rent the green, did we buy that green sand
So
filter for the well, or are we renting that?
Yeah, so for 17A, that is under a separate contract with AdEdge. So this is to pretty much make the water connections to and from, essentially to treat the water from 17A and put it back into the distribution system, as well as connect electrical from the existing water treatment plant to allow for this temporary system to operate. So there's a significant amount of electrical work to pretty much get this well 17A treatment online. So the GC is going to be responsible for that work. So as a part of that initial AdEdge contract, that included supplying the green sand filters, as well as assembly of that. Then that includes interconnecting piping between each of the vessels, which there's 9 of those, and any electrical that's associated with that specific unit itself. But in order to get main power to the temporary treatment, the GC is going to be conducting that work.
Okay, I think,
There's a lot of moving parts there. for sure.
yeah. So for this $800,000, they're cleaning out the sludge,
Correct.
they're inspecting the walls, and they're gonna repair the walls,
Yep.
and they're gonna do all the electrical and piping work,
To make that
Green.
17A functional.
but we have to purchase the green sand filters or rent the green sand filters from somebody else.
Correct.
We have to buy the track vac from somebody else, and we have to get the sand filter from somebody else.
Correct.
So, and just to clarify, because I know I would be confused, when we say green sand, that's for manganese, that's for temporary treatment of the 2 groundwater sources. When we say sand filter, which sounds the same, that's
That's in the
for the
plant.
treatment of Old Oaken Bucket, which is not manganese. It's more to filter out the stuff that's in surface water. So they're 2 different things. And then also on this is also the bulk storage tanks.
The
and
bulk
chem
storage tanks
feed.
are included in that.
So they're
cost as well.
replacing and upgrading the chemical feed systems there.
Okay. Sean, how do we, where do we get the money to do the, rent the green sand filters? Have we done, is that part of those 1.2?
This is actually the last thing, too, is the last piece to be signed, I believe, is all the other pieces are in place
It was
contractually.
part of that.
Correct.
appropriation
The stuff we did at town meeting?
Yeah.
Yep.
And was that part of this 1.2?
Yes.
That was,
So, yes.
and the track vac,
so,
Track vac, they
Back
already
to
had appropriated
2017.
some money for. They've done that before, they just never replaced it. So they have money for the
Appro-
track vacs.
so that's not part of the 1.2?
I think a small portion, but they had
Yeah.
80,000.
And then the bulk storage tanks, in the annual town meeting, was 450.
Say that again?
So there's 450,000 for the bulk storage tanks.
That's not part of the 1.2.
That's not part of the 1.2, and 80,000 was appropriated at the 2017 town meeting for the track vac. So that money won't come out of that 1.2 that was just appropriated in the fall.
So it'd be great if we had a piece of paper that kind of organized all these thoughts that just came out, because it's hard for us to,
Yeah, so if
Put
you
all
could
of
give
this
us
in.
A lot of
like the
pieces.
track vac that had come out of the annual in
2.5.
2017, and the monies that we actually appropriated literally on town meeting floor, I think, because we had the
Yep.
meeting. And then, how it's going to 17A based on our discussion tonight. 18's already been applied, or we've already approved previously. Can you just kind of map it out so we have the numbers, what we have?
You know, it's funny because Ryan and I were talking about this morning, and I needed to draw a picture to understand it, and I was thinking, that would be helpful to you too, just to see. This required a tremendous amount of coordination, thinking outside the box, and a lot of people working together we're doing all kinds of things at once to try to take that. It's like doing a heart transplant you gotta replace your biggest piece of infrastructure
Well, it's just helpful because then, you can logically understand when it's coming from 17A, you need to filter it. It's outside
Right.
the plant, it's not up near the well, that's why you need the electrical. And then you're talking about the sand filters anyways, that's separate because it's the organic material you're trying to
Right.
collect and yada, yada, yada. But I think the worry is that if something comes back and we need an additional cost, how come it wasn't captured as part of the 1.2? Could be a question, or, what's the cost for repairing the wall itself? I mean, so
Right.
I think that's what you're really looking for.
yeah, we just need to understand it. I think we all are aware of the fact that it has to be done. It's on a tight schedule, it's a lot of coordination, it's not really negotiable, but we gotta understand what we're paying for and know what buckets of money it's
And
coming
the
from.
reason is because people are going to be asking us.
Tony, you want these are the costs, this is where the money's coming from. Yeah, we can do that.
Just two quick questions. So you mentioned that you've met with Pride, and have you worked with them on a project that is as time-sensitive? Or has anyone have experience with them having to do this dance?
So we as a part of our due diligence, we typically contact a lot of references.
Yeah.
And though we didn't really see something along the lines of this type timeline, everybody has pretty much said that they pretty much provided some exceptional work. And as a part of those interviews, I asked about the timeline, and people had said, we think that they can pretty much do that job within that time frame.
We're
It's interesting,
going to get to
too,
know them
that-
very well.
So they're working as a sub to Adage, which was Adage's choice. And when we
Okay.
talked to them about it, they said they're their preferred contractor to do this work.
And they
use them all the time, so.
And essentially said that they wouldn't have bid on this project if Pride wasn't involved.
And the other quick question is really outside of this contract maybe Nancy can remind me, is on the well contract, or the green sand filter contract, on that piece, was there a contingency built in should that we have to extend, or was that, how is,
Is it overall?
I mean, God forbid it takes 4 months?
Right, there's a
Pardon me?
contingency- There's a contingency in the entire project.
Okay,
But not for the individual cars, but.
okay. Not that that's going to happen, but that was it.
The real wild card, I don't want to belabor this, the real wild card is when we clean out that sediment basin.
Right.
What's going on with the
Right,
wall?
but that leads to, we're going to need
That's
that
gonna be-
longer.
That's going to drive the schedule.
If the wall's good and it's the track vacs, then we run it out. If the wall needs work, no matter how much work it needs, what we have to do, that's really where we're going to run into problems.
It's sight unseen. You won't know until you see it.
I would say without, the rest of the work, the green sand filter, I don't want to say it's easy, but you're taking stuff out, you're putting new stuff in.
Right.
We know what we're doing in those areas, but once we get into that basin, we don't know what's in that basin until we pump it out, get all the sludge out, and get in there and look at it. So that's where the wild card's gonna be.
Just when will you start, if it gets approved?
They were looking at starting up the green sand filters the first week of January. That takes a little startup period and DEP
Yeah, DEP wants
oversight
to
and
inspect
approval.
pretty much right before we started up. DEP wants to pretty much make a final inspection, make sure everything's as spec'd out.
And how does snow impact all that? Are they able to work through all that, or?
Shouldn't, we were discussing that the other day with
Right.
providing heat tape for any of the exposed pipes.
Okay.
The filters are in a heated building now.
Yep.
Okay.
So they looked at shutting the plant down mid-January and hope to have it back. It will be mid to end of March.
Well, nice. Sean, can you just give us regular reports back that say the status of it, like every 2 weeks, so we're on top of?
Sure, yeah, be happy to.
Sean?
Well, Karen asked one, and Mara asked the other, but
Sorry.
all right, as long as you're, no, that's fine, as long as you're comfortable, I've never heard of Pride. I certainly know Robert Hour and Gioso, CPS, another great company, but I've never heard of Pride, and then I'm reading some of the comments from some of their people they've done work for, and it's really not exactly like this. So I'm just a little nervous if they run into something, but I'm all in favor of giving maybe a smaller or newer company how long they've been in business. And if they've done this, if we have a January like last winter, I don't care about the snow. The snow's an insulator. If we get that bit of cold, well, we're gonna have problems. So that's, and if you guys are comfortable with it, then I guess I am. But they left 50% on the table. That doesn't make you nervous at all? I mean, 800 some odd thousand to 1.2. That's, someone didn't do their homework there, or gee,
You know, Sean, what we're seeing is, these companies are so busy, a lot of them are saying, you know what,
throw a number at it.
here's a bid. If I get it, I've paid for my kids' college. If not, I'm too busy really to do the job anyways. And that was the issue with the dredge project we just bid.
Right,
Someone just threw a bid at it and it was nowhere near what it should be.
but this is winter time and contractors are typically a little quieter. Robert Hour being one of them.
Yeah, that was one of the questions we asked Pride when they were in earlier this week, that you're comfortable with your bid prices, you didn't miss anything, comfortable with the schedule, yeah, it was, and they showed no signs that they
All right, good.
missed something.
Very
so.
confident.
All right,
Yeah.
good. No, it'd be exciting to watch, like Tony said, updates, and if you could, you know, if there's stuff for us to see, I'd love to go down and see the
Yeah,
progress.
it looks nice already, just the vessels, the green sand, the 9
Yep.
filters being set up
Yeah, that's already.
in the
that's-
garage next to the treatment plant,
Yeah, that's in progress.
yeah.
This is to a degree a very unusual project.
That's, again, making me a little nervous, and, you know, all right, yeah, and, yeah, all right, no, if you guys are comfortable with it, then I am.
On a motion?
Please.
Okay.
Nope.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to award the contract for general contractor services for the repairs at Old Oaken Bucket Water Treatment Plant to Environmental for $874,380.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Kerwin. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you
Gentlemen,
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Keep
it.
you
Next time we'll have a
updated.
little bit more time to talk. Very good.
Keep you updated.
Thank you.
Feel better.
We have
Yes, thank you.
a group
See you in the funny
finger
papers.
So, I think most of the other people are here for interviews, correct? I think it's fair to say.
Oh, no.
So here's what I'd like to do. It's 8:45. We're going to take a break for the board and for our secretary to take, just because we've been doing it for 2 hours. That being said, I'd like to see what we can do to get through at least the first maybe 2 categories. So I'm going to look at Recreation Commission and CPC. Then, here's what I'll do. We have Shellfish Advisory. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. We'll go after them at 9. And then what I'd like to do with all the people who are interested in the Whittles Walk Committee, which is actually a good discussion, I'm going to probably take people up at least 4 at a time to come up, and that way, I don't mean to short-circuit it, but if I give everybody 5 minutes, then I think everybody's going to be here until midnight. So what I'd like to try to do is not rush you, because I want to make sure you're able to say anything you want, anything, ideas, we'll go through it, but kind of do it collectively as opposed to individually, because like I said, I'm not trying to, we'll be here for a long time. So, that being said, I'd like to bring in our next discussion, which is the interview of board and committee applicants. The first one I'd like to do is the Recreation Committee, and I see that Michael Connor is here. If I could ask Mike if you could come up to the mic quickly, and is Maria Marcelino here? Great, I'll have you next. And then is Greg Pia?
We know he's here.
Sorry.
Greg.
Greg, can you tell me how you pronounce your last name? Piaseski. All right, Greg, you're here. Great. Michael, you're first. How you doing?
Good, great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Now, have you been on, Mike, I looked at it, and I looked at a whole bunch of resumes. Have you been on before, on this committee or in a rec?
I was on
think
this
you're
committee
rec, right?
approximately, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago.
I'm going to say yes. And why are you looking to get back on it?
I think at this stage of life, I can sort of do it again. I have the time, my kids are a little older, and the stuff that I volunteered for before, I don't have to volunteer for now, so I'd like to give back to the town in some way, and with my sort of career path and what I've done and the background that I've had in life, I think it's a good committee to choose to be on.
People on the board, questions?
Mike, have you done anything with kids in the kids programs in Scituate?
I have, Mr. Vignani, yes.
You rattle off a few of them?
Coached baseball, I actually still do, basketball, soccer. I still work with the Recreation Department at this time. The Course Foundation, actually, I still work with and volunteer a lot of time with the Course Foundation. My job, I work with kids. It's in a different community. Yeah, I've done so for 30 years or so. I've just basically worked with kids, and that's basically sort of what I do.
Great.
What?
Yep, just a quick question. Just so folks know, you're also an assistant principal, so.
I am.
right, So you have
Yep.
a lot of experience there. Coming on board and being a coach in town, what's your number one priority joining the Recreation Commission, really? Just saying,
I mean, it's fields. I mean, I know, and we see that presentation today, which is a phenomenal opportunity for the town. When you travel to these other towns, they have these incredible, fields and playing spaces for, whether it be tennis courts or inline rinks, which we have. But again, we know that in this town, really, it's the land. We don't have these mass opportunities of land that these other towns have.
Right.
So we had to be creative, and that's why we have these boards, to be creative and do the right thing for the community, not just kids, for everyone in town to use these open spaces for recreation.
great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Nope, you answered my question.
Comment, I have a comment.
Yeah, I'll have one after Sean, too.
When I was liaison when Mike served, fantastic individual, great dad. Professionally, he's working with kids, and on his time off, he's working with kids. Thank you for stepping back up.
Thank you, Sean.
How many openings do we have?
2.
All right.
And I'll just reiterate what Sean said. I've coached with Mike. I've known Mike for a number of years. He is very humble in what he just said about all the different programs he's involved with, and he's a leader in all of them, and I think he'd be a great person for this committee. You understand rec from the time when our kids were 3-year-olds till they're 18 years old, and you've done the whole gamut of it, so I think you'd be a good asset to the committee, so.
Thank you, Tony.
Enough said.
Anything else?
No.
Michael, thank you. We'll probably be voting on it tonight. If not, it will be at our next meeting, but, or it could be at 1 o'clock or 12 something tomorrow morning. We'll
I'll be
find
asleep. Best of luck. Okay.
We'll
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Maria Marcelino, thank you. Come on down.
Does it say there are openings, how many openings?
It was in the packet.
And you're interested? Hang on one second.
I'd like to get to our
What's ours?
Can you tell us a little bit why you're interested in it? I know, I saw your application, but
It doesn't say a lot.
doesn't say. Well, it
Gives you an
says
opportunity
certain
to
things,
speak.
but more detail.
So let me tell you a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Scituate. Went off to school, got married, still continued to live on the South Shore, and then came back and raised my children here. So my children have gone to the Scituate schools. They are gone now. We have freshmen in college. One is at University of Tampa, one is at West Virginia, doing wonderfully. So, with that said, I'm an empty nester. Raising a set of twins never really kind of afforded me the time to really kind of give back to the community. So now I'm finding me, and a part of me is to give back. So I raised the children here. I guess in this, I would like to kind of maybe represent the not so represented. There is a small group that look like me and that have the needs that maybe I have as a single mom raising 2 children. I don't live in a $1 million home, but we do and took great advantage of what Scituate had to offer. So I want to support the local programs. I want to give advice from a mom's point of view, having gone through and used all of these. And then as a middle-aged woman, being able to like use these things and kind of give advice that maybe others wouldn't have. I have organizational skills. I'm a business development officer, so I could find us money. And I do that very well, so I'm very successful.
Put you on the
in my
water
position.
committee.
But I do it well, and I work for Liberty Bay Credit Union. We now have a presence here in Scituate, which is super, which keeps me closer to home, and that's great. And really just kind of really want to add diversity to the board. No, like, people get nervous over that word, but I just really want to kind of represent. And I think Lorraine can speak to who I am, because our children grew up together, and she's super. So, any questions?
I noticed you also put two other Affordable Housing Trust and also the Cultural Council. I see one being recreation. Have you any interest in those two? I know the Cultural Council just got $5,000, according to Jim, if you were here earlier, which is great. And of course, the Housing Trust is it's a great trust. So that's why I was curious your desires in those two.
Well, for those two, I think I can affect some sort of change, and kind of. Like I said, I mean, I'm really good at fundraising. I worked at UMass Boston and raised a lot for their programs. I hate to say that it's an easy ask, but I think that if your story is a good story, I'm a Scituate girl. I have Scituate kids, and so my story is from the heart. And so I think that anything that I apply to the program is sincere. I have a vested interest here because I do live here. And unfortunately, like I said, I haven't had the opportunity to do much because I was raising twins. And so I can't say that I was on a committee before or doing this, because I was running children around, and I was happy to do it, and I'm sad that I can't do it now. But that's okay. So.
Questions?
No, I was just going to ask the same question about you've obviously ranked what your
Yes.
interests are, so that's great that you want to do this, because it'd be great to have the expertise you could bring.
Thank you.
Just one question, have you ever had an opportunity to attend a Recreation Commission meeting, just as a bystander?
No, I've taken advantage of the classes.
That's good, yeah.
And just from just kind of recognizing that there's so much that goes involved in the planning and the coordination, and that's it just happens to be one of my strengths. So, awesome. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, very quickly, is there one topic or one program or one event that you think you could affect the most amount of change on? Is there anything in your mind, or is it more from a general picture?
Well, so when I look at the offerings for the Recreation Center, I think that there are other things that we might be able to add to it, and of course, that would, that's just a discussion. I think that maybe there are programs that need to be maybe better funded so that there could be a greater offering. I think that there may be needs in the community that maybe we haven't heard, because those people don't know how to kind of voice that to, committee members.
Do you have one, to have one in mind?
Well, I mean, I personally, my children did chess, and chess was great, but I just was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we got more involved in chess? If there was somebody in the community that really loved it and really kind of wanted to, and then we could fund that in a way that these children this is a real part of their lives. Not everybody does sports. I mean, my children happen to do sports, but not every kid does sports. And so I think that if that's your thing, then let that really be your thing. But I don't know that here in Scituate we offer that.
That's a great point.
So I just feel like, for all.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. As you know,
Yes.
I'm going to say for everybody. Well, in the rec, excuse me, for the rec, we might be making a decision tonight.
Yes.
For some of the others, I know with the Whittles Walk, we are not. But any event, we'll let you know either tonight, or if we don't, we'll vote at the next meeting, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg? Greg, you had the advantage of hearing some of the questions, and I have to say, I
Just answer
didn't
the
see anything about resume, so you're going to have to tell us why you're interested.
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for your time. Greg Piasecki. I grew up in Duxbury, played athletics in Duxbury. I've lived in Scituate for 14 years. I've got a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter, both that have done athletics in Scituate. I've been a coach in Scituate, mostly soccer. You don't want me coaching basketball, that'd be bad. I'm in the teeth of it with other parents that are involved in sports, collecting their feedback, their thoughts. And I think that the town of Scituate does a lot of great things. Looking at what we're doing with the fields, we need to do those things. I think back to the 70s when my father was heavily involved with developing the soccer program in Duxbury and some of the work that they did, which was low-lying fruit for the fields. The fields were a mess back then. The program was nothing like it is today. And talking to him is some of the things that they did. We don't need to spend millions of dollars to see improvements in what we can offer the people of Scituate. As an example of that, if you think about soccer, okay, I'm a big supporter of soccer, playing all my life and my kids. It's really confusing as a parent to know what it is that your kids can sign up for, okay? There's so many different organizations, there's so many different programs, and as a parent, I can tell you, talking to them, they don't know where to turn. And so having something that's more coordinated, perhaps on the Scituate Recreation website, to direct people, if you have a fourth grader, well, what are your options? If you have a second grader, what are your options? So I think that there's low-lying fruit for better organization that we don't need to spend a lot of money. But I think where I'm unique is I've got kids that are 9 and 12, and I'm talking to the parents that are involved in sports right now. And I think that I could be a really good sounding board for the town of Scituate, for the Recreation Board, and I think I'd have a lot to offer. I work for, I'm a head of sales for a technology company. I work out of Scituate, so I'm in town all the time, right? Other than when I'm traveling away. So I'm looking forward to giving back to the town. I have not sat on a board before. I've not been part of this. But I want to be part of the solution. It's not just asking questions, but being able to offer some concrete solutions other than just, well, we got to spend more money, right? And so I think that's what I bring to the table. Questions?
You answered mine.
Same, the only thing, I mean, obviously, everybody's a great candidate. Time commitment, sales, travel, do you have the commitment to, because this committee specifically also, I think, requires some good, consistent, hard work. Some people like to show up every 30 days, but others really do a lot of work from meeting to meeting.
Yeah.
So how would you approach that?
Well, one of the advantages I have is I do create my own schedule, if you will, from a travel perspective. So my travel commitments are only about 20% of the year. Okay, the vast majority of it, I work from home. So I have flexibility that most people don't, that have a fully committed full-time job. So I don't see that being a deterrent.
Great, thanks.
Karen?
No, that was my question.
Sure we don't have 3 spots?
I know.
This is one of those committees. This is tough. This is the hardest thing. A lot of times we're sitting trying to get people to get involved. Here we are, 3 different personalities, 3 great people, and makes it so hard for us.
Right, and can I just note, because this will definitely be a conversation later, is every meeting, whatever committee it is, are always open to the public. I'm sure John would say this. And so if you don't get appointed to a committee that you feel passionate about, there's absolutely no reason why you can't come and participate in the discussion and find out what's going on. So I think that's sort of a blanket, because we have a lot of really good people in this room tonight.
No, I agree. You hit something, Greg, that I think is kind of intriguing, and that is this concept of like a central hub, if you will, of gathering information for youth sports, starting at various ages. I think we tend to have more silos of youth, whether it's from the, what do you call it, town, that's not rec, but it's the other, youth center, as opposed to rec, as opposed to Scituate basketball, as opposed to, and the key is that there should be a central hub of information where people can get it and understand, starting in whether it's first grade or fourth grade, if the kids are going out for the first time, cycle football or cheerleading or whatnot. People have an idea where to go. That's the one thing that's really severely lacking in this town. Obviously, it's tough from a town perspective because the town is public, And if a private entity doesn't want to partake in it, then we're
Mhm.
stuck. But I think, generally speaking, it's something that should be shared, and I think that's a intriguing, low-hanging fruit, as you put it.
Yeah.
That could be solved.
And it impacts,
Makes
it
sense.
impacts the attendance of children
Yeah.
participating in these
Yeah.
things, because the town has so much that
Yeah.
they're offering.
Yep.
So people aren't aware.
Well, again, thank you. Sorry for the
Thank you.
shortness of the time.
Appreciate it.
Same thing. Decisions either tonight or we're going to make it the next next meeting. We might, I'll ask.
Laura,
my
when's
board.
their next meeting?
It's the 18th.
I think we're meeting in January.
Okay.
We're
All right, so it's not
having-
impacting.
So it doesn't
We've got a
matter.
lot of meetings
Yeah.
in
I-
December right now that we are attending. So it's the only month we're skipping is December.
Good. So we have some flexibility with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greg, thank you
Thank
very
you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
All right, we're going to have one other with the CPC, which happens to be Skylar Chick. Is she here, or he here? Please, come on down. Now, I did see,
I have one of those unisex names.
A pronoun.
So,
hang on one second, Skylar, let's see. I did see your,
Yes,
Resume.
thanks for waiting around for an hour.
Sure.
oh yeah, you're the landscape architect.
Yep.
Been doing a lot of parks. Well, why don't you explain why you're interested? I read
Why
your
I'm
resume and I
interested.
read your letter, and I was fascinated by it, because I'm like, you're really qualified,
Well, thank you.
by all means.
So as a professional landscape architect, I've had the opportunity to implement the CPA funding on projects, which is a really great thing. I see how people are impacted by that. Public open space is really a very important resource. I've done a park in Marshfield that was acquired using CPA funding.
Is this the one with the big park that they're doing right now with the?
No, it was done in 2012 at South River Park. It was actually, it's adjacent to a gas station, and it was 3 housing lots that were abandoned and contaminated sites on the South River. So the project restored the site. There's a Veterans Memorial
Oh,
that's
yeah,
built
it's
there.
right on 139.
It's right on
Right,
139, exactly. Yeah, it's a well-used park. There was a lot of community involvement in the construction of that and the design, of course. And then most recently, I designed King Oak Hill Park in Weymouth. That was a $1.8 million park that just opened this fall.
Is that the baseball park?
It's across from the
Across
baseball
from the
park.
baseball park,
Yeah.
okay.
It's on one of the highest summits in Weymouth. It has a view of the Boston skyline.
Nice.
There's an old historic home on the site. It's called the Emery Estate. It was modeled after George Washington's Mount Vernon.
One with the
And it's-
columns.
Yes. So it's a very unique, it's not something you see typically in Weymouth. It's a 24-acre site, hilltop site, and the planning director there always states how if the town did not purchase that site with CPA funds, that it would be 42 housing lots. And the neighbors didn't like that idea, the community didn't like that idea, and so we built this park in this historic site that respects the character of the home, the character of the site, and there's major public access to this area that was privately owned previously. So my interest in being on Situate's CPC is to basically be involved in the early stages of that. Obviously not the implementation, but the early stages of planning and sort of picking and choosing where funds can be allocated. I'm in particular interested in preserving open space and natural resources in particular, and public access to Situate's beautiful waterfront, I think is a really important thing. It's something that draws people here. I'm not a native of Scituate. This is my adopted town, but I spent my summers here. One of my best friends growing up, his family has a home here in Scituate, and so I came here very frequently as a kid, and I chose to make Scituate my home. And I'd be honored to give back and serve this community.
Questions from the board?
No, like John said, your background and experience would be very useful. And it really supports a lot of what the CPC has done in the past. So thank you for raising your hand. We really appreciate you coming forward.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, and I love that, I'd be interested to see how you would apply your thesis on New England town greens and how to help preserve some of our different areas around town. It's in his letter.
I read the letter.
So I'm just, I think folks like to know some of the, the experience that some of the candidates have that come before us, so I'm just sharing that. So I like that. We ask everybody, right, commitment, again, it's a really important committee. Proposals come in the fall, quick overview and analysis and a lot of discussion to get ready for town meeting. Any issues with that type of time commitment and the type of research, really, I do think the CPC members do an incredible amount of research on their own as they vet different projects.
So it's sort of a two-part thing. In terms of research, I absolutely love doing research. That's something I do all the time for work as well, and I love doing it on my own anyway. So I don't see any time issues with that. In terms of my job, it's very seasonal in a way. So my job is design at work. We don't construct anything, but the construction season ends more or less now. And so the fall and the winter tends to be a lighter time anyway for us. Design tends to pick up in the spring, and obviously construction begins in the spring as well. But I also don't overcommit myself to things. If I'm planning to do something, I do it 100%. I don't, dabble in all these different things. I pick what I really am passionate and invested in, and I do them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How long have you lived in town?
Approaching a year now.
And tell me a little bit, where'd you live beforehand?
I grew up in Holliston, which is a small town in Metro West of Boston.
Play you guys in sports?
Yes. Well, I'm happy to be here in a winning town. But
You're on.
I grew up in Holliston, and then I lived in Natick, so also in Metro West for 6 years when I came back from college.
Just a quick, what are your thoughts on you saw the presentation on the turf fields?
Yes, I did.
What's your thoughts on using CPC funds to fund building that?
I think it's certainly valuable for this town. There are some issues with using CPC funding for synthetic turf.
Right.
But other aspects of the park could certainly be used.
What about bonding?
I think it's sort of a bigger question that requires more investment and understanding of the numbers and, where funding is coming from, where it does need to be allocated. You mentioned earlier how it's not necessarily the most opportune time for a project like that, being $10 million, because of other commitments that the town has.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, those were hard questions.
I've been here
You've been here all the meetings, so I just want to say that I'm fascinated by your interest, the idea of preservation and trying to utilizing some of the coastal areas, in particular, the most recent acquisition through CPC that can actually have more of a park use, and that's going to be accessible. There is Conservation Park, which is actually across from the golf course, which is underutilized, and the concept design from the 80s has never been applied, and there's some individuals who are interested in trying to get more grant money and trying to get that back up and going. And the fact that we have hundreds of acres in the West End that have been acquired through open space, through CPC, but are really kind of constrained because there hasn't been really any trailheads and trails and designs. And I think, with your credentials and your background, it begs a question, the town looking more towards parks, which it used to have years ago, and it's been decommissioned, is something that, to look at things a little bit differently, because it's a benefit to the town, to the residents, and your expertise would be invaluable. So I just, kudos. But that being said, no other questions from the board, or?
Just a comment. I didn't
Yes.
speak. Just
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry.
that's,
Didn't mean to
I
keep
really
you
didn't
out.
have anything to add, but thank you very much for, throwing your hat in the ring. Certainly a professional, and I think you'd be a great asset. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Skylar, thank you very much. All right, so folks, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, all right? You folks can take a break if you want, but we're going to do it for the board, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes and get started. Shellfish, and then we'll go right to the Whittles Walk Committee, okay? Welcome back. We're back on camera, right? All right, here we go. So if I could we talk to Dave Doffney, please? Dave, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Tell us why you're interested in, well, I know you're probably interested in the shellfish, but exactly why you should be on it. How about that?
I don't necessarily know why I should be on it, but it's a passion I've had for 45 years. It's probably one of the first memories on the water with my dad, was clamming down the river. Since that time, I've self-diagnosed as bivalvular. Some of these guys get that, but anyways. And it's just a passion I have for doing it. I've helped out over the past years. I've helped Harbor Master Patterson and DeMayo on their programs. I've worked with the state officials for reseeding and relocations, and it's a little hard to get into putting things back, but it was, a couple hundred bushels of stuff you normally take out, you're putting back in, and then taking people out. So that's part of it. For 45, maybe even longer years, I listened to Lucian Russo way back in the day, wanting to farm the ocean, and it was a concept back then that no one really even thought about. So I think it's exciting. I like to think I can bring some energy to it, and some passion, and some knowledge, and I'm looking also to learn. I would love to be part of the aquaculture for this town. We've, as Sean would know, we've eaten trapped at table, not because we wanted to, but maybe because we had to. And it's a concept now that seems to be really intriguing, but it's something that I've been fortunate enough to do most of my adult life. So I think it's also exciting with the changes coming down to Mulaney's and the changes in the commercial fishing industry and all the things that are coming. It's full circle. We used to sell our stuff off the boats. You used to go down and get fresh fish or fresh lobsters or fresh anything you wanted right off the pier, and now government regulations don't let you do that. So it's I think it completes the circle on this one part of it. It's a big industry. It's I think including scallops and lobsters, it's a $500 million industry for our state, and I think the people of Scituate certainly should be able to enjoy the things that we've been able to enjoy for a long time.
Thank you. Anyone?
No, your passion is great about it, and,
I figured you would.
I think that's what we need. It's starting up, and we need people that want to get involved in it, so. I don't have any questions.
Are you still a commercial fisherman?
Actually, after 39 years, I'm about ready to go back to it.
I'm just looking through your list of
Yeah, it's taken me a long time. I've always helped my dad or my brothers and stuff like that, and I was in it before I went into trade, so.
Okay. Well, you've done a lot, along the waterways, so this is great.
John?
Like David, as you can guess that Dave and I have known each other as long as I can recall.
You're older, though.
And one thing that did jump out, and he took it lightly, was, he reseeded an area down there, among doing many other things, but that's the way, he took contaminated product, put it in the ground, and.
So that whole process is that they have commercial harvesters are allowed to harvest that product as long as it has a place for it to be transplanted to. It comes to the clean waters here, and it goes through a process, and it cleans itself in our rivers and bays. Some people like it, some people don't. What it did was it certainly showed interest in that part of it. There's a natural population of quahogs in the river and around, and oysters and steamers and mussels and all those things. So what I see with this whole thing is the commercial aspect of it and the growing aspect of it is one, but the collateral benefit to everyone is going to be so much better, I think. That's my hope in the future. And I see it being a lot more viable than what it is. Right now, a lot of these shellfish beds go dead because they're not harvested. So it's a field, if you will, that hasn't been tended to. It goes fallow, and then you come back to it, and you're digging, and you're making activities, and it helps. It's a process. From a layman's, other than that, I don't know anything about the science, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in Scituate where half a day's work was 12 hours, and I've applied that for everything else that I've done.
Tony?
I just have one quick question. I know we're
Sure.
going through these quickly. Do you have a recreational shellfish permit or a commercial shellfish permit?
Scituate doesn't have a commercial, so it's just recreational.
You have one? Okay. So maybe we could, I don't have any other questions, but maybe we should explain.
Yeah, so we have a 5-member board. So one is going to be appointed by the Waterways Committee, the other happens to be the Shellfish Board, and then we have 3 at large. Of those 3 at large, I think one is supposed to be a commercial shell, the other happens to be a Recreational, and I forgot,
To that today, I'm sorry, because we don't have a commercial program.
well, we know that, that's why, this is, we understood when we were putting it together, it was gonna be probably first time through, that we're gonna have a commercial one, but nobody has one.
Right.
That's, we don't have any.
We
But
have a-
that being said, the third one is, I think.
large.
At large, so it's just somebody at large, so that's what we're looking to fill 3 positions for the, and we have
There's
7.
7 people.
7 people, so that's why, just to give you a heads up, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Jamie, very shortly, because we've seen you before, we know who you are, come on up, because you and John had raised this issue
Evening.
with us, and we appreciate it.
How's it going?
Good. So, you want to be on it?
I do, yes.
Got the experience in doing it down on the Cape.
Yeah.
You brought it to us with John Tedeschi 2 months ago, I think, was it?
Yep. I brought it to
October?
the town about 3
Brought
or
it
4
over
years
a
ago.
year
Didn't get
ago or
very
two. It
far.
didn't go far, right, I
Yeah,
remember.
but here we are. It's exciting. And just a correction on the commercial. There is no town commercial permit, but I do have a commercial state permit.
Gotcha.
So that might satisfy,
That position.
that position.
Well, I don't have any questions. I know your passion for it.
Yeah.
We've talked to you a number of times.
Yeah.
Any from the board?
Just one question.
Sure.
Give us, 30 seconds. Why should we put you on this board?
I've been doing this for 11 years. When I say that, I'm an owner-operator of an oyster farm on the Cape. I have a lot of experience and insight that I could bring to the inception of an aquaculture program in the town. It's very exciting, and I want to be a part of it. I want to help drive it forward, make sure that we avoid any pitfalls right off the bat that I may know of, having been in the industry for 11 years.
How about conflict of interest? Any,
I don't, I think we briefly talked about that last time. I don't think there'll be a conflict of interest because any license that would be voted on would be voted on by yourselves, I believe, right? So we would draw up the rules and regulations and maybe create a permit. But then again, there's also going to be a member from your board present on the committee?
no, but we'll be the ones giving out the permit.
We're liaison.
Okay.
So, but just for disclosure, you want to be on the board and you do want a license.
I do.
Right, so,
That does create a problem, and that's the only reason I'm going to say it up front.
Yeah.
Because if you were on the board, you'd have to recuse yourself on anything, yeah. I think you'd be a better participant, Jamie, if you were present during the meetings.
But
for
a
discussion.
non-voting member?
But a non-voting member, because obviously you have input, you can say
Yeah.
something, obviously, whatever they decide, but I think it does put you in, it does.
Fair enough.
the only counter to that I would say is, we're brand new, and you probably have more knowledge than anybody
Yeah.
about this.
Exactly.
So, I may be able to oversee that on the first run-around, but I may say, after licenses get sent out, it may be an issue at that, in my mind, so. But that-
This fledgling stage is really where I'm most interested in being present. I mean, this is going to be a committee that will continue on in perpetuity, correct?
Correct.
I wouldn't have any problem with stepping down once the rules and regulations were formed, but I do think that I'm an invaluable resource, and I've got a lot of industry connections, that would help.
Great.
Remind me on the mission on this. We're going to have rolling, we're going to appoint 3 people, but they're not all going to have the same term, right? How does that, normally on
I
a
thought it
board,
was
you
3
don't want
years, 3
everybody-
years, 2, I'm not sure.
Well, that's
Or
a
maybe
good
I'm looking
point.
at
It's
the.
right there in your packet. Is that what you have?
Of course it is, right, thank you.
It says 333, though.
It's 2 years for the
2.
waterways person, recreational shellfish permit is 3, and the at-large is 3.
Okay, because normally we like to stagger so that, you're not turning over a whole board at the same time.
Yep, I like that.
Well, if you'd like to change the chart, you're welcome to do so.
I think it's worth looking into just for purposes to I mean, obviously, we can't do it tonight, but to have it staggered, and perhaps we.
Well, I think we can stagger it. I think all we do is just say we're going to appoint you for 1 year or until replacements, because it's a 3-year part. Excuse me. And we'll stagger it, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
So that's a
That'll work.
possibility. I only say it, but then you get the issue of assuming everything's done, and then you get the license, the impression that you're on it, and you get, that's all I'm just saying, Jamie. I know
Right.
you, and I'm not saying that. It's just, believe me, I've been doing this long enough to know what people say behind your backs.
And you're not the only one.
What's that? No,
You
you're
won't be
not.
the only one.
You're not the only one, so that's what I
Right.
say. So heads up on that, that's all.
Yeah,
But to your point, there is no conflict right now because we don't have anything.
right.
So I don't mean to put that on.
And developing in rules and regulations, I don't think there would be very many conflicts at that stage.
No. But you
Unless
know
you
how
say-
everybody will, they'll say that,
Unless one of your rules is, gotta be. how-
But there can be a series of checks and balances, and really, we're going off of state regulations ultimately. I mean, we're pretty much going to be, cut and paste.
I think your expertise is invaluable at this stage of our
Yeah.
development.
Let's face it, if it wasn't for Jamie, we wouldn't be having this
Wouldn't be talking
conversation.
I agree.
Yeah.
And John
I wasn't gonna
as well.
say it.
And this isn't just for Jamie, and thanks for asking the question, or making it clear to everyone. I don't know if David's interested in, in having an area. We know John and Jamie are, so keep it in mind, you might.
I did want to ask Dave that. Are you interested in actually getting a plot and harvesting?
So keep it in mind, you guys, you might be better served or better to be able to help us from the outside working in, but we definitely need everyone there, that's for sure. Or if you don't mind, you put them all on and then they all have to step off because they,
Right.
so, and there are so many people interested. Without you, we'd be,
So for instance, in the town of Dennis, the Shellfish Committee is made up of largely oyster farmers, like current oyster farmers. Granted, they didn't develop the rules and regs, but they're all on it and voting members, and there are no conflict of interest there. So, I mean, we could look at them as an example,
it's the one thing you want to avoid is the appearance of a conflict in that if you begin to legislate that creates a financial benefit to you, you have an issue.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And all I'm saying is, it's not necessarily you or anybody else in this room.
Yeah.
It's subsequent subsequent people who could actually come in and maybe have an angle,
Yeah.
and then they change it. That's what we try to
But
avoid.
if we have ultimate transparency, I mean, we could avoid that, right?
Yes, but you do read about towns who all of a sudden issues come arise. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
We could
again,
beat
I
this
don't,
up
we
all
can
day.
beat it up all,
Yeah,
so we gotta
fair
move
enough.
on.
Yeah.
Jamie,
Well, thank you for your
very
time.
much. All right, thank you. We're not deciding any of this tonight, so just FYI, okay?
Thank you, everyone.
Scott Harrington.
Hello.
Scott, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you doing?
Good. Briefly, why are you interested? And also, are you interested in getting a permit to do it?
So I think I want to work for Jamie. I think that'd be the best thing to do. No, so I am passionate about growing and harvesting shellfish.
Oh, yes.
I've had Harwich recreational permit, Duxbury recreational permit, Scituate recreational permit. Right now, I'm in school. After already having 2 degrees, I'm going back to school for an aquaculture certificate. I'm going to be finishing up pretty quickly here. I think I'm a dual threat. I'm not afraid of grunt work. I've set farms up. I've dragged bags of oysters around to the point where my back is screaming at me, but I'm also a fairly smart project manager and can read and write very effectively. So I know we're starting this at an infancy, and I think, certainly it would behoove us to possibly model new regulations after some towns that are a little bit mature than Scituate is at this point in time. I have made some connections over the last few years, and
Why do you think that?
why do I think that?
Well, you're saying you model them after towns that are mature. My way of looking at it, if a town's already done it, there's no sense reinventing the wheel. But do you think that some of the towns that have more maturity in doing this, there's something that's going to be more beneficial other than the fact that they've...
Well, I think towns have set regulations in place and have learned from their mistakes. I think it would take much more time to start with a blank slate of paper than to look at what's already been done, see what's working in different towns.
I'm with you.
And bring best practices into Scituate.
Okay.
I also think, shellfish in Scituate is, underutilized, and, we really, as a town, haven't grown that resource at all, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity to grow a resource that's both economically beneficial and also environmentally beneficial. In some cases, shellfish can certainly help improve water quality. So grants are issued to do that. So I love the science aspect of it. I love the grunt work aspect of it. My job, I sit at a desk and answer a phone all day, but I do love the physical labor of working out in the field. So that would scratch that itch a little bit, I believe.
Questions?
Yeah, Scott, you never answered, do you intend on trying to get a plot to have a farm of your own, or?
No, so that's not what I initially want to do, not in Scituate anyways. So where I am right now, I think having your own plot can be financially risky, right? I would just assume help somebody as a laborer or as an advisor than to risk a lot of money having my own plot at this point in time.
So no is the answer.
No is the answer, yeah.
I will say this, I've known Scott for many years, great guy, hard worker, bright, and would be a good asset to the committee as long as any other people, but just to get that disclosure out there as well, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Appreciate that.
Just a question, just a standard, if you do hold any of the licenses, recreational or commercial?
I do have a recreational license in Scituate, yeah.
Great. And then I think your project management experience professionally will also help, kind of marries nicely with your education right now.
I'm hoping it will.
I know.
All right, just Mara's question is time commitment. Obviously, this is a startup committee, so it's going to take a lot of, yes, the standard meetings, but also prep work. Do you have the time for that?
So, I believe so. Nobody's rolled out, 20-hour-a-week, schedule for the Shellfish Advisory Committee. But I do work right in Rockland. My boss provides me with a lot of flexibility in my schedule. With enough advance notice, I can pretty much do anything I want.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
No, everyone's asked the questions.
Can I just clarify one thing? Scott, you said a second ago that you're not from Scituate, but you do live in Scituate.
I do live in Scituate, yep.
I just didn't want people to misconstrue whatever you just said.
Right, no, it was on his resume.
Yeah.
That's, thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Susan Harrison.
Maybe we should give a shout out to
evening.
Quincy College that you can get a certificate in agriculture. Who knew?
Well, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. So you kind of know what we're asking, like why you're
Yeah,
interested, and I guess,
I'm not gonna have a plot.
Are you looking to have a plot? Well, that's taken up our.
Do you have a license?
I do not have a license. I am not looking for a plot.
So why are you interested then?
And I actually have my full resume here. I had just put a couple bullets. So I'm new to town. I've lived here for a year and a half. I have twin 3-year-olds and a 7-year-old son, and we live in North Scituate. I currently work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Not a conflict, though. I am the director of program integrity for Mass Health. So I work in Quincy and Boston. My background, I come with a background of policy. And every day in my job, I work on complicated policy issues and work with stakeholders to resolve issues and come up with different scenarios or possible regulation changes. I do that all the time. I would like to give back to the community, and I think I could be valuable as with my policy background. Prior to working in healthcare, so I've been in healthcare for about 15 years. I'm director of program integrity now. Prior to living here, I was working for the state of Maryland, and I was a director of health policy for Maryland Medicaid. And prior to that, I worked for Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and my true passion is environmental policy, and lived on a couple remote islands in the Chesapeake Bay. Worked on education with aquaculture there, so they call it clam, but it's really a quahog. Quahog and oyster aquaculture, and have volunteered ever since I professionally have been working in health policy. I have volunteered on a lot of programs, whether it be aquaculture in the Magothy River or other rivers in the Chesapeake Bay, as well as help to manage a marina in the Chesapeake Bay We have had community marinas, and we had a 60-slip marina that I was helping to manage that. And I guess, let's see, I have an active captain's license.
I saw that, yeah.
That's my retirement job. And worked, when I was working with Chesapeake Bay Foundation, when I used my license professionally. So I grew up in Rhode Island, I should probably say that. I'm not like complete carpetbagger. I grew up in Rhode Island on the Kickamute River, right on the Mount Hope Bay. So the Mount Hope Bay is shared with Massachusetts too, so I spent a lot of time on Massachusetts waters growing up, and recreationally shellfish all my life. Probably illegally, who knows? Should I admit to that?
Probably not on television.
I was 10.
Thank you for coming.
I was 10.
Just a minor.
Yeah, just a minor. I wouldn't have done
board.
hard time.
Mark, you want to step out?
I'll ask a quick one.
Sure.
Just looking at your experience, great experience, and being a volunteer on the Maggie River Oyster Gardening Program.
Yeah,
What would you take from that as far as, and coupling that with all your policy experience, bringing that together, what is something that you would think that you could bring together and offer to the committee? Because we've got a lot of shellfish people out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of shellfish people out there. I haven't professionally done it, although I've had
That's okay.
friends
That's what
who
I'm wondering,
have.
like, just from your
Yeah, so
observations and
my background is biology major as well, and I mean the part of the Magathie River Association would oyster harvest. Oyster aquaculture. We would just we would do it all along the communities. So you'd get your spat and grow them, and then you'd release them on the reefs that they have out in the bay. So it's important for the health of the bay, really, and that's what, that's how aquaculture was used for that. So in the Chesapeake Bay, it's commercially, but it's also used to help clean the water, because
filters.
way back in the early settlers couldn't even make a path through the bay. There were so many oysters, if you could even imagine the Chesapeake Bay like that, but it's a long way ago.
That was my question. No, I want to know what you thought you could bring to this group. There's going to be, 5 fishermen on here, and what is the thing that you're going to be able to bring to the group to make it function better? I think you said.
I'm a policy person, so I'm the one that every day I read the regulations. I don't think I know the regulations. I would always read them even if I've read them before, and research to see what are lessons learned in other communities trying to implement an aquaculture program, as well as can it benefit to help clean some of the water that's not as clean, and possibly get it to a place where there could be more aquaculture.
Great.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
We
no,
appreciate
thank
it.
you
Sorry.
for having me.
Thanks for waiting.
Yes.
Thank my babysitter, really.
Make sure you don't get locked up with your comments, so you don't get.
Nicole, is it Nicole? Is Nicole here? Yep. Okay, then that one's maybe next week. Jeff Palmer?
Good evening.
Jeff, good evening.
I will be brief. I do have a great appreciation for the time and efforts that you all devote to our community, so thank you. I've got a recreational shellfish license, have had for probably 10, 15 years. I have a Duxbury non-resident recreational shellfish license. I am compassionate about oysters and shellfishing. Mr. Harrington is my next-door neighbor, and he and I have been out on clam flats together. So, yes, we are passionate. I have an understanding of shellfish as the value, as a food source, the environmental value, and I see a real untapped potential here in Scituate, both for commercial value, an aquaculture application, as well as maybe more importantly, a expanded recreational shellfish opportunity. I have had some involvement with Green Wave out of Connecticut for potentially growing seaweed on the eastern coast, and probably, unfortunately, Scituate probably isn't a viable location given its nor'easter winds and potential winter storms. I probably naively would like a plot, but I probably don't have the experience at this point to make that commitment to go for a plot. So that's why I'm here, and that's what I think I could add. I do have some project management experience. Been active in the Scituate Knights of Columbus, help run their golf tournament. Been running the pig roast for 25 years, and that's my story.
Thank you. Questions?
Okay, so just clear, you don't think you're interested in getting a plot?
I would be at some point, but that's, I mean,
Down the road.
come April,
Right.
that's not probably where I'm ready to go at
Great,
this
and,
point.
again, what are you gonna add to, there's gonna be someone from Waterways, it'll be the shellfish constable, what do we call him? The
Warden.
Warden.
Yep.
Probably somebody that's in the business for a
Right.
living.
Just my passion and my project management experience in helping get things and people organized.
Great.
Questions?
Just a comment, I've known Jeff for quite a few years, and he certainly is not giving himself enough credit on what he volunteers through the Knights of Columbus, I know firsthand. So I think he'd be a great asset, plenty of energy to this committee. Thank you for stepping up, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you.
Sure.
Finally, John Tedeschi.
Hi, folks. My name's John Tedeschi, 1 Jericho Lane. Thanks for considering my application. As far as my expertise, I don't know how much real expertise I have in the business. I'm very passionate about bringing aquaculture to the town for many, many different reasons. Bringing young folks, the kids into seeing how it all happens, cleaning the waters. I grew up in Cohasset, moved to Scituate when I was 18 years old, and I've resided in Scituate from 18 on to, I hate to say it, but 60 this year. I've been recreational shellfish permit holder for, I think, probably close to 40 years. I rake moss as a kid. I did a lot of clam digging when I was a child over in Bassings Beach when there used to be clams over there. So the passion is certainly there. I am trying to seek a permit for a plot. So I would like to be a farmer, so that may become a conflict. I understand that it's an open meeting.
Yes.
So I would certainly be at all the meetings. I don't necessarily have to be on the committee. I'm here to support the committee and also be there if a member is needed to form the committee, just to keep this thing on track, which I think we're really moving quite quickly here. And
Oh, yeah.
it's super exciting, you know? I was shocked when I looked, 6-8 months ago into this, and it just couldn't happen. And now, it seems to be on the fast pace, which is super exciting. And other than that, I'd love to be on the committee. That's really about it,
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Anybody? Questions?
I don't have any.
No, I mean, John's been here before, so I think, and I appreciate you saying that you don't have to be on the committee, but knowing that you will be there along also for the the ride, if you will, to help.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'd probably be at all the meetings regardless.
Good.
I think we have some good candidates, including yourself.
Yeah. And I'm blown away at the candidates
I'm
that
kind
I've
of
heard.
regretting that we didn't make it larger, like 7 or something. But again, as a committee, it's easier to be managed by 5. If you have 7, which I know the next group of people are going to say, I wish you had it more like 19 or something. But at some point, it becomes unwieldy because you got to make sure you can meet it. And we've seen by past practices with other committees, 7 or 5 are generally the thing. In this case, maybe we should have gone up to 7. I didn't realize the vast interest that everybody has here. But I'm encouraged by it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would like to say I'm very proud of this town, too. I mean, I just can't believe the applications that I've heard, not just Shellfish, all the applicants that have been in front of you this evening.
Yeah.
Blows me away. I think it's great. We're very, very lucky to live in this town. Thank you so much.
Sean, thank you
John,
very
just
much.
don't, you've worked hard at this also. I've known John for,
Yeah.
probably close to 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And you'd be great on the committee as well. You're a hard worker, you do a lot for the community, and clearly you've been involved in this from the beginning, or almost the beginning, and your hard work would pay off, and you're in town. So it's.
Thank you, Tony. I
Yeah, so
appreciate
I
that.
think, I like Maura said, I respect the fact that you say you don't have to be on it, and you feel you're in good hands with all the talent around you, but I think you'd be an asset to the committee as well, so.
Right.
Being modest, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Thank you, John. All right, so, again, we'll deal with that voting at our next meeting. So if you folks know, but we're not doing it tonight, we'll do it the next meeting, I think it'd be best, all right?
Well, we still have Nicole, too.
Yeah, I don't know if she's,
Check in with her.
and see, yeah. If so, we'll meet with her and then vote next meeting, if that happens. All right.
Thank you.
So the rest of you here for the golf committee, I assume, right? Okay. So we have, 1, 2, 3. Looks like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Crowd.
We got 17 people we're going to go through. All right.
Let's do it by handicap. Who's the best golfer?
You can do that. How's that? I'll give it to you. All right, so why don't we do this? How about if we can have everybody move down to the front? How's that? Front row. We get everybody together, and then if I could, I'm going to name 4 people off, right off the bat, have you come sit at the table, and we'll just kind of rotate it, okay? You're all going to get the same, it's going to be like speed dating, actually. This is unusual. It's only because we have so many of you, and I'm like,
It's 10 o'clock.
we're going to ask you questions. We're going to ask you probably very similar questions, and I say that because this is not to be a disadvantage to anybody, it's just that you're passionate about it. This is one of the largest number of applicants for a committee we've had. I'm just going to give you a heads up on that. And it's just great. I wish we could have this for the bylaw review committee. All right, so if we could have Mark, is it Bissell?
Yeah, Bissell.
Bissell, Kevin Callahan, Jack Devine, and if I could, James Fosgard?
About this one right here, you missed John Doe? Oh, he can't.
He's not here. So if I could have those 4, just so that everybody understands, has everybody taken a look at the golf committee charge? That's something that's really important for you to understand, because this is what it's about. This is why we're putting a committee together. And if you haven't, just to let you know, we're going to be picking 7 members. It's an ad hoc committee that's going to be obviously comprised of 7 members. And you're here really to take a look at developing conceptual plans for each potential option with a cost-benefit analysis. That's what we're looking at, to take a look at the golf course, evaluating building condition and the structural integrity to determine if further investment is warranted. Incorporate and ensure a robust public input component through surveying, analysis meetings, and any other means deemed necessary by this group. In other words, what can we do to get out to the public to find out what's really needed, what they're looking for, not just for golf, but maybe for off-season usage. Obtain, develop needs assessment, which would include efficient operation, location, adequate space to meet golf course needs. Keep the Board of Selectmen advised of your work. Obviously, you're not going to be working in a silo and separate. The board needs to know what's happening. and provide the updates, the annual updates to the board. And then the committee's final report must be presented in a document to address the following. So we're asking you to do all this stuff to put together a report, to come back. Number one, or A, importance or urgency of each of the identified needs. You know, do you fix the fence in the front? Do you put the road down? Do you get, you know, bathrooms out in the course? Do you replace the railroad ties? You know, whatever you come up with. Do you get rid of the coyotes? Conceptual designs for each of the alternatives. It's this idea of, like, what are you going to do with the golf course? What are you thinking of doing with the structure, the building? Capital and operating cost estimates. We need to know what those costs are, because the residents are going to say, how are you going to fund this? Is this going to be funded through the enterprise fund, which everybody probably expects it's going to be, or other? Pros and cons of each alternative, because you got to weigh them out. Proposed project timeline for the alternatives. So we're looking for timelines. And then to coordinate approach for project implementation that minimizes the disruption of the golf course operation and maintains uninterrupted town services. So we're not looking to shut it down for a year. How are you going to manage this? So that's really what the charge is all about, and that's what this is about, to kind of get an idea. Because we kind of need to now have a kind of short-term, mid-term, long-range plan of the golf course, because it's a profit maker. And now we need to begin to utilize that to make it a better course, and while maintaining revenue, but also making a better, well, it is a great course to begin with, but even better, okay? So, that being said, Mark, and then is it Kevin?
Jim.
I'm sorry.
They're not in order.
They're not in order, okay. So that's what I was just trying to figure. So that is Jim, and then Kevin, and then, of course, Jack. All right, so Mark, quickly, 30 seconds, I'm going to say for all of you, you know, why are you interested, and what do you see as a priority?
I'm glad we're not rating my handicap, because mine's probably the worst one here, but I've enjoyed the course for quite a few years. I think now that we've got the bond paid off, it's really interesting to look at what are we going to do next. I think town meeting last year with $2 million for the watering plan was a good idea, but I think we got to look at those bigger expenses. I think a long-term visibility is important, as well as kind of getting a couple of things done short-term to increase revenue in the short term. My day job, I run operations for a software company, so I'm constantly looking at what are we going to do midterm, short-term, long-term, how are we going to pay for that, how are we going to bring it all back in and grow the business at the same time. I think a lot of those skills translate well into what has to happen here, and figure out both for the golf course, but also for the town. What's the right thing to do with this now paid-for investment? How do we take it to the next level and see it generate revenue now that we've got a chance to do that?
Any particular item that you see as being important?
The 17th tee box. I mean, I'm half kidding, but it's a 360-degree view of Scituate, and it's just, you can't even put a ball on it. But that's a small, one thing to look at is just kind of the play conditions in general. I also think the curb appeal, we could do a lot with that, looking at parking in the clubhouse, at least a short-term, mid-term plan around that in terms of what can we do. It's the first thing you see when you come in. That could use some work and I think generate some revenue.
Thank you.
Nope, that was great. I'm good.
No, just keep things moving.
So here's what I'll do. I'll go through all four of you, okay? And then if somebody, has a question, we'll go through everybody. How's that? You can ask a question to each one, but then if something comes up, we can do it and then.
Sure.
Jim, I'll go with you next. How's that?
Sure. I've been an avid golfer my whole life, and I've just gone back to playing at Widow's Walk. I see a lot of potential. Professionally, I'm a product manager. I pretty much do for a living what you laid out in your charter. I think that through all the different golf experience I've had through my life, and professionally, I'd be an asset to what you want to do here. In terms of what you can, improvements I can see going on, like you mentioned, like some course improvements, but also utilizing the property to its biggest potential. I mean, you have a beautiful view right there, and you have a clubhouse that needs a lot of work, and, are there other revenue streams you could get from that clubhouse, opening up to like functions, things like that? There could be parking issues, things like that. But there's so much potential on such a beautiful piece of property that I think there's just, a lot of different things you could do, and I'd like to be part of that process and offer any services I could.
Anything in particular? I'm just getting your resume because I was looking earlier. I just want to make sure I have the resume with the face, so I apologize. So what do you see as any major priority as,
Well, I think
course.
you have to get a functional clubhouse, right? Because you have to get people in. You have a facility there right now, I think is very inadequate. I mean, just from things like the restrooms. To be quite frank, it's kind of a disgrace, the conditions of some of things like that.
Yep.
So I think there are just huge improvements that could be made, because what you have there, you could have something that could be, just an incredibly desirable place to have functions, things like that. You have to kind of think out of just like a golf course, and, what could that property be utilized for everything? I think it's a prime piece of real estate.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
I just want to make one note, just for all of the candidates or anybody that's still up watching, is that every candidate has provided all of us with background information. So we may be rushing through just because of the late hour and the number of applicants, but we all have, spent a good chunk of this weekend reading your backgrounds and appreciate all of the expertise. So I just want to make that note so that anybody watching doesn't think that we are getting a thorough picture of everyone.
Well, good point.
No, I think just going through and hearing what, they're all kind of on the same theme of what they think they're going to add. So just.
Kevin, you're teed up next.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm Kevin Callahan, and I'm a 40-year resident of Scituate. I've traveled most of my life doing marketing for high technology and manufacturing firms. So I would be bringing to the table an ability to research your present marketplace, interviewing golfers, bringing together a marketing plan based on their needs as they perceive the club, and then bringing it back and creating a comprehensive communication plan for the course and integrating it into the town of Scituate. So I see an opportunity, may not be with the board. They're worried about things that I don't know anything about. I don't know grass, except I cut it. And I don't know, sand.
I'm glad you made that clarification. There are some towns that are, I think, selling that type of grass that's successful. Just want to make sure it's not
I
us.
just started to cut the grass. That's a new thing for me. So that's just, but I do know how to listen very well and to bring what people are trying to accomplish into reality. I've done it successfully for 4 years in high technology and manufacturing. That's different from selling a car or a Coke or a bottle of beer. It's highly technical, and it involves a great deal of research. And then taking that research and bringing it back to the originators and creating a communication program for it. I've worked with radio all the way through to create trade shows, created magazines, created websites, newsletters, all based on market identification and moving backwards to expand it. The more you understand about your customer, the better off you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent most of my time with IBM customers, digital equipment customers, their sales organizations, listening, and then coming back with very detailed communications programs that, because they were profit motivated, there were, in the beginning, as close to monthly performance charts. Where are we going? Why are we doing this? And a lot of what I see is available with little or no influence. Just showing up. If I show up at a radio station, I can pretty much guarantee you Widows Walk will be on that radio station. Content is easy. It's understanding why you're doing it. So I can bring that to you. I can bring it to you efficiently. And at the end of it, you'll see a return on your investment, which will result in renewal. You'll continue to build on programs you already have. The other is I'm a painter, a photographer, and a writer. So I do it all myself, and I have teams of people who will work for me for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I could be a member of your board, but I think I could help your board. So that's my pitch.
Thank
That was
you.
more than 7 minutes.
That's all right. That's all right.
Kevin, you did mention that when you applied, that you had other committees that you were interested in? And
Yes,
this is your
my
first
family
choice?
wants me to see if I can get involved doing the same thing
Yeah.
for the Irish sister city. and also downtown culture. I have lived here for 40 years, but I spent most of that time in an airplane, going to major cities. And I always come back here because this is, my family says, they call me Da. They said, Da, you don't like to cross 3A. And I don't. I like to be on the inside of 3A.
You didn't hear about the sister city going to Ireland in the spring then, right? Flying
I
over.
go to Ireland.
I mentioned that because I believe there is an opening, I think, on the sister city committee, I thought. Or did we fill it? I think we filled it. We filled it, sorry.
That's okay.
Just I throw it out there, because that's a great committee, too.
For research.
It's a good, they're a working committee that's doing a lot of good stuff, too. But okay, thank you very much. Mr. Devine.
Mister, wow. That's kind of shaking. I've been called Mister in a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Good, Jack.
My background is I'm a PGA pro, been that for 55 years. Was a head pro at Scituate Country Club for 10. I've worked every angle on the golf course. I've worked private courses, resort courses, driving ranges. So my background is pretty well established at 55 years. I agree with everything that these fellows are saying. The clubhouse has to be done. The parking lot has to be done. I think that Saudi Arabia has a better parking lot than we have. And the thing is that you have holes out there that if any of the seniors step in, I think there's a lot of lawyers that would like to handle their cases. But anyway, I think that a lot can be done. There's a lot that should be done. And I think that when we get together as a committee, we can give you a synopsis of what it is. I have one big problem out there, and the problem is the 9th hole. When you come down off the tee and you take that curve, which is a hairpin curve, there's no fence or anything.
Yep.
And if a guy is a little bit drunk and hasn't played golf, he's going to do a Superman right off the bat with a car, right? And so that's, you're absolutely right about the entrance to the golf course. If that could be better, so the whole thing has to be redone. I'm sorry, but it's really gone. And like Jimmy's been, I had him as a kid. Anyway, and he knows golf. He's a good golfer, and the clubhouse has to be done. As you know, you go in it's the entrance to the clubhouse that you're going up into the lounge area. That's awful. You're going down a little set of stairs going up and through. And otherwise, it'd be a work in progress. Just to let you know, I don't usually run for something. I run from something. I don't run. But people have asked me to join the committee and try to get on the committee, and so I made my pitch.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Questions from the board for any one of them, or generally? Tony? John?
Maybe to all of them. Are you available the winter? Not just us four, but everyone in the room, for your meetings in the winter. And then there's the whole remote participation thing. Some of you guys might go to Florida for the winter. So just keep that in mind. And
I'm available for the winter.
I'm unfortunately available for the winter.
Retirement is a state of mind, but I'm around in the winter.
And you don't necessarily have to be there, so, but just something to think about. Right.
A lot of things on the, Bobby Sanderson could answer a lot of things on the money end of it, because he's in the register every day and does a good job. Must have said something funny, because I'll tell you, well, half is involved.
I don't like to hear that my employees are on the register every
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd like to call up the next four, if we don't mind. Is it Peter Frasca, Richard Grime, Mark Joyce, and Bill Limbacher? Bill here? I don't know if I saw Bill in there. Yes, there we go. Yeah.
Can I ask a question of Jim Forsgard?
Yeah.
Jim, I just got to ask you one quick question. Did you grow up in Scituate?
Yes.
Your mother a teacher?
Yes.
Wow.
That was 37 years.
That's right. I wondered if the same family. Just had to ask. Wow.
Questions?
Are you Peter?
I'm Peter.
Peter,
No, I'm Mark.
okay. You're, what's that? Mark, okay, so I'm just trying to figure out Mark, Richard, and Bill. Okay. I'll start with Peter, okay, because he's next on the list. So you've kind of heard the spiel.
I heard it, okay.
There you go. You're on.
Great, thank you. My name's Pete Frasco. I've lived in Scituate now for, I think, about 32 or 33 years. I'm a lifelong golfer. When I was in the 6th grade, I was packed off to caddy camp until high school. I've played golf my whole life, sometimes well, sometimes not so well. I was on the original golf committee to get Widows Walk done. So I have a history of it. We did a lot of work. I think it was probably about a year and a half, 2-year project before we brought it to the vote of the town hall. We did a lot of work on it, and we did investigation. We did best practices, checked with other golf courses how they did things, and we got it through. There was always supposed to be a board, and this is the first time. There was also supposed to be a golf committee, but it never came about until now for some reason. I was also on the committee to pick a new maintenance contract. That was probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So I served on that committee. So I do have a history with Widows Walk. There are some things I'd like to see done right away. I think there are a lot of easy things to be done. I think you do those right away, and then you prioritize and you do the bigger things further down the road. And
So
I'd love to-
why should we put you on the committee, and, like, what are you going to bring to it, and what do you want to do with the committee?
I've got a lot of time. I'm retired. I endorse retirement. That's great. I have a lot of time. I have a lot of energy. I'm on the government. I have the history of the course. I understand why some things were done. We mentioned a lot about the clubhouse. The clubhouse was built that way because we didn't want to alienate restaurant owners or people with a hall. We didn't want to alienate Scituate Country Club by having tax money compete with them for a function hall or a barroom or a restaurant. So the clubhouse was built sort of on with that in mind, so that it would be just functional enough to have it for the golf course and not really be a threat. So it was built that way to get in the support of the people in the town of Scituate. So why? Because I've got some passion. I've got some good ideas. Like a lot of people here, there's a high-tech background, project management, getting things done, relationship building, understanding things. I think we all bring that type of knowledge here. So your question, why? Because I do a great job. Still a great job.
Sean?
Do you still feel that same way, Peter? And as far as competing with Scituate Country Club or not?
I think there might be something to that. I don't think that there might be something to that. I'd really have to hear exactly what they'd say. I'd be open to that argument. I'd be open to listening to Scituate Country Club or whoever has a restaurant or things we're competing with them. We'd have to take that into account because we are using taxpayers' money. They are taxpayers. Now, I wouldn't say we have a second-class operation because someone objects to what we're doing. But I think it's important to listen to what an issue may be, if they have one.
The only reason I say that is the way you phrased it, and for 20 years I've heard people say, the function hall, we could get more tournaments if there was a function hall, and they'd stay and they'd spend more money and would have more tournaments, more revenue.
Well, there are a lot of courses that have more tournaments that don't have a big function hall. They use a tent. We had a tent for a couple of years, a few years back. And I think things like this, you do best practices. There are a lot of courses. See how they run it. I mean, these people that have these courses, they'd be happy to tell you how they do it. It's a matter of going out and talking with them and putting it together and then discussing it among the committee. What can we do? Why can't we do it? Why aren't we doing it? What were the issues? I mean, that's just what the issue. I just answered a bunch of questions.
On that particular subject, if you don't mind, I have an opinion, so I think I'll share it now.
I'll tell you, we'll get to that, because you're next, I think, line-wise. Do you have the plans for the clubhouse that was originally proposed to expand, because we can't seem to find them?
I didn't have, I think I saw.
That would be a valuable asset right now for this
I
committee.
saw the plans, but again, it was, There was some pushback when the course was being proposed from local merchants. Were they going to be competing were we going to be competing with them using their tax money? And so it was scaled back. I mean, the idea was to have there was a good idea, big open porch and utilizing everything, what everyone says. So we wanted to do it, but Rick Agnew, who was the administrator at the time, decided to get it done without less opposition.
That's right. We'll contact Rick about that then.
He's in Florida.
Questions from the board on that? All right. Mark, I'll get you in a second, so keep that thought. Mr. Grime, how are you?
Number one, I don't want a plot to raise oysters. I have had a recreational clamming license over the years.
You can't do it at the golf course, unfortunately. You can fish.
I've
You
clammed
can't
in
clam there.
Scituate since I was 8. I'm a passionate golfer. When I first retired, I worked at Widows Walk as a starter ranger for 5-6 years. Then it got in the way of my playing golf and fishing. I play golf there every afternoon with a group of people. I communicate with probably no less than 50 to 7,500 people that play at Widows Walk all the time. I know the needs that they have stated over the years. Number one, curb appeal. Number two, expand the clubhouse. Number three, just make it a more golfer-friendly course. We've lost a lot of business over the years because we were quote-unquote environmentally green, which it still is. But Todd over the years and Ryan over the years has made it a much more friendly course to play. And speaking of which, they've done an excellent job maintaining the course. 2 years ago, we had that major drought, and the course was like I could get a 300-yard drive, okay? In a way, it was a blessing in disguise because you were able to reseed and redo. Now we've got a gem of a golf course. And it's something the town needs to keep and expand upon. I do feel that we've thrown away a lot of money because we haven't had the functions, because we can only seat inside 70 people, I think. And most functions are like 120 golfers. They've had to go elsewhere. They call us to have it, and we can't provide it for them. That's crazy. We're losing money. As far as my business background, I used to be a sales and service coordinator for the country of Canada to expand our product up there. I got that going. I've been retired for 12 years, so it's hard for me to remember everything that I used to do.
That's all right.
I haven't served on any boards in Scituate over the years. I've been I'm not a townie because I moved here when I was 8. I have been on boards other than the government boards for 25, 30 years in town. I'm passionate. I think I could be a great asset to the committee. As far as being away for the winter, I am away for 2 months. However, in today's modern technology, there's Skype, there's FaceTime. I could be at a meeting and not be at the meeting. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
You were very thorough.
Richard, thank you. Mr. Joyce.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me. First of all, I want to just call out the current staff at the Walk. I think they do an outstanding job of greeting not only folks in the town, but outside of the town. So kudos to them. A lot of things have come up already this evening. I think I share a lot of the concerns as the course, as it is playable, how we can make it more efficient, drive revenue there. I'm a firm advocate of I think, one of the best assets in the town. I've only been here since 2004, so I'm a bit of an outsider, but come down the Driftway to see that club, the view. I think, a little opposite of Peter, though, I think that we should definitely be competitive there. It's a business like any other business. I see people that go to Scituate Country Club that leave the Walk or maybe go to Hatherley. I think there's an opportunity. I think it's the best track out of the three of them. That's a golfing term if you're not familiar with that. And I think we can leverage that. We can grow the business. We can grow the revenue for the town, and we can grow revenue for some of the other businesses in the town as well, through associations with restaurants, function halls, or have that business within the clubhouse itself. I think it could become a year-round clubhouse. I think a new clubhouse obviously would be in order. you could build with the advent of indoor golf now and seeing the revenue that's being generated with that. I think it's an opportunity to have a year-round revenue coming out of that facility for golf and other venues as well, whether they're function halls, gatherings, parties, whatever you want, town parties, personal, private outings. So again, a lot of opportunity there. My background is in IT. I've had various roles over my 35-year career, locally, nationally, globally. Right now, I lead a team of solution architects and project managers where we deliver IT solutions, whether it's cloud computing, cybersecurity, globally to a lot of different companies. So I think I have the business organizational side of it, but very passionate about the course. I love it. I got over the fact the first year I hated it, even though it was 5 minutes from my house, but it made me a better golfer. I met some great people through the town there. Again, I look at it as an asset that's leveraged, but could be leveraged a lot more, and I think I could bring some ideas and, some suggestions, if you will, and some energy to help make it a better place for everybody, whether you're a golfer or non-golfer.
Thank you. I'm glad it's made you a better golfer. I can't say it's made a better golfer of some
then
of my
you
board
quit on it.
members, but
Quit on it.
You need to retire you need to retire first.
I learned that one a long time, but that's,
And you don't have to be a great golfer to enjoy it either.
no, that's what Morris says.
Wait, what?
Questions from the board? And Mr. Joyce, just anything?
No, everyone.
Nope.
Your
Everyone's
time
got their
commitment
pitch
between here and Arizona, is that you?
Oh, no.
No.
Arizona for business and pleasure once in a while, but I'm a year-round resident.
Okay. All right, I'm mixing them up with someone else. All right, okay.
Bill, good evening.
Good evening. Appreciate you guys taking the time. And I expect that you're going to be out of here by 1:30.
That's okay.
That's a straight line.
That's all right.
By way of background, I'm a project manager and engineer. By experience with the town, I think I've worked on a board or two. I think I started out in the advisory board at ZBA, the planning board, as well as CPC, and some other interesting things like the alternate energy committee. Yeah, so I got a fair understanding of what goes on in town. I've acquired a liking for golf. Unfortunately, the game doesn't appreciate my attempts. So, but I think just to summarize what my take on what everybody else has said, there's a need to figure out what you need to do there. It's definitely an asset to the town. It's a self-supporting act, or it can be a self-supporting act to the board. But I think as you look at it now, it's an eyesore. And it's got a lousy reputation in terms of being difficult to play, and it's not friendly. And I think the opportunity is there to come back up, look in the near term what we can do, what the midterm, what long-term range is, and put together the plans to do it. And I think collectively, looking around with the group that's here, I think you could pick any 7 out of that group and be able to do that. Because I think golfers are pretty passionate about what they're doing and have a good understanding of not only the game, but the track that they're playing on. They'll do that. So my first impulse would be to come back up and see what I can do to take out my curb appeal. As soon as I've got that addressed, I'd take care of the trap on number 4. And then look at the rest of the alternatives.
Thank you, Bill.
That's
And
when
and
we
I know
stand
Bill.
up and see.
Yeah.
I know Bill since I was on the zoning board with him, and you're an asset, Bill. And you're on the planning board and have been an asset for this town for years. And thank you, not only in the town, but also in private organizations, and so.
Thanks for not asking how many years.
Questions from the board? Anybody? No? All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So then I'd ask for Thomas McDonough, Paul McSorley, Bradford Merritt, and Monty Newman. I know Monty's here. So I'd...
Trying to do this in order here.
Well, that's, I was going to, but then, you know what, I'm like, once I know who's who, we can jump to them, so. Thomas, there we go.
Tom McDonough. I've been a member over at Widows for 18 years. I was a member at Scituate before that for 15 or so. At Scituate, we get a chance to play almost all the private golf courses through leagues around the South Shore. I do go to Florida for the winter, but we have a member down there in a community, and of all the golf courses I've played everywhere, I stack Widow's Walk right up as far as an interesting course and a challenge to anybody that loves golf. I worked there for 13 years, and I saw the increase in the better players coming. I worked every Saturday. And the better players and the younger players coming, that the word was out that it was such a challenge for these guys to play. They loved the idea of the challenge. And that hasn't left, it's improved. And I have a construction background, commercial, electric in Boston. I was like a liaison for years, still do it with Ryan, of taking input from the members and anybody that wants to give input, and we document it. And on a Saturday or a Sunday, we have a cup of coffee up at the maintenance barn, and we go over all the items that the members want to see done to the course. And if it doesn't impact their budget, they take care of them or have already taken care of them. They've been tremendous. You usually don't get that cooperation with golf course superintendents. So I feel as though I've been part of the old Widow's Walk. I want to be part of the new Widow's Walk.
Thank you.
And we need a lot of work over there.
Yeah, well, I see it right now as that it's a diamond in the rough.
That's right.
And there we go, puns again. But I'm like, I think it's just needs a lot of finishing touch. That's my own opinion. I'm sure I'm share the boards. It needs some finishing touches, and there are going to be some costs for it. But now's the time to give it the attention. So, yes.
Jim, what are your plans on convening the committee once it's appointed? Like, what's your timeline?
As soon as we can. It'll probably be after Christmas at this
January.
point. If you're not going to appoint them next week,
Right.
till 2 weeks, I'd probably do it early in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Tom, you go away what months?
January through April. Yeah, yeah.
Where do you go?
Down in Naples.
We could go there.
Yeah. Sure. Come on down.
Fly out and have the meeting.
Fit you all in.
I can just say.
I hope you all get the fruit baskets I sent.
I can just say from experience, I know everyone has probably certainly played and is passionate about the town-owned golf course, but I don't know if there's anyone more passionate than Mr. McDonough. He has called myself and probably some of you others, you know, if he sees something that might need improvement or something that's working well, either way, whether it be food and beverage or the course itself. Just think he'd be a fantastic asset to this group. And again, just like I said earlier, if you guys were sitting here, wish we could put 17 or 19 on. Everyone's going to bring something different to the table, that's for sure.
Well, we all give our input anyway, whether we're on the committee or not. We try to do that, though. We try to help others over there. Monty's been the leader with our group over there, and he comes back all the time and gives us a heads up, and we try to give him input to run back with. And we're all passionate about the place. We have a real asset with that,
Yes.
with that golf course.
Yep. Any other? Great. Thank you, Ms. McDonough.
You're welcome, Jim.
Paul?
Yes. Good evening, thanks to the board for their time tonight, and let me express my interest to be a member of this golf course committee. I have been listening tonight to the previous speakers, and I think a word that's come up, everyone has said the same word, is passionate, and I think that's what golfers are. Golfers, it's a frustrating game, and, you know, they're passionate, and they, I think it's always one good shot, usually happens on the last hole where, you know, it brings you back again. So I think golfers will bring that passion to this committee. I have served on the golf course committee prior to this. My wife Patricia and I moved here to Scituate back in 2010. Prior to that, I lived in Braintree, and Braintree has a similar situation to Scituate with their own municipal golf course. It's a little bit older. It was started back in the 50s as a 9-hole course, and once again was run like it is here in Scituate. No tax dollars go towards it. It was, you know, enterprise fund, and, you know, it had to survive on its own. There was bad years, and Braintree had problems with flooding issues, where you had a drought here. When there's heavy rains, the rivers and the bodies of water there would flood the course, and unfortunately would result in carts couldn't be used, and sometimes the course had to be closed during some time. So we had to make, plans just to make sure the revenue was there, and there was always a surplus, and it was well-run. So I'd like to bring that expertise that we learned from Braintree, and, knowing how a committee works and how to, run a meeting properly, and just to bring these ideas back to the Board of Selectmen. At that time, we were appointed by the Parks and Playground Commission. They're the ones that ran the course. And so we were appointed by them. But that was a ongoing committee. Is this just a one-year? Oh, no, it's ongoing then.
It's actually ongoing. I think for the purposes of a report right now, and
Okay, yeah.
then the ideal is to begin to implement and see how we go forward. I mean, because it's going to be generating, after things, in time, money. It just will.
yeah.
And I'm like, there's just, to maintain it, to keep it going and improving it, subtleties over time. That's what's the intent of it.
It's a one-year term, though.
Right. But golf is, it had, with Tiger Woods, there was a, Tiger Mania there, and everyone was, interested in playing golf. Hopefully that interest will come again with the younger people, youth, playing more. And you might have to just go out there and try to, I think, Bob has some good programs. I've taken through the Recreation Department a couple series of lessons over there, through him. So you can get the kids back on the golf course and get some interest there, and just a lot of other things going on nowadays with, just being in Scituate between the beaches and boating and cycling, but we have to keep those that are interested and passionate about golf, coming to the course.
Thank you. Questions? Excuse me. All right. Bradford.
Hi, by way of introduction, I'm probably kind of a blank page to most of you, but I grew up in Scituate. Then went to college, and then I didn't come back to Scituate for 40 years, but 3 years ago I moved back here, so I'm now back in a permanent resident of Scituate. And yes, I'm a passionate golfer too, just like everybody else. I really would be honored and privileged to serve on the committee to help make Widows Walk a better place for our community. I think it's an extremely valuable resource from a recreation standpoint, as well as from an environmental standpoint. With my background in management, I would probably come at it from kind of a business aspect. We are in competition with other courses in the area, whether it be South Shore or North Hill or Pembroke. So we always have to be cognizant of what's out there if we want to maximize our revenue. And it is a revenue center for the town, unlike a lot of the other departments, unfortunately, but it is a revenue center. And if we can maximize that, have some revenue come back to the town on an annual basis, use part of that revenue for capital improvements, I think that would probably be the way to go. I've had experience in management of long-term planning processes for organizations, and I think to start, I would really like to see the committee work on a long-term plan with goals, shorter-term plans with objectives, and even shorter-term plans with tasks, all fitting into some sort of a financial budget process that we could execute. Of course, working with the town and trying to figure what that financial aspect is. So that would be the route I would go, and I think I could bring my skills from administration, management, financial management, long-term planning management, as well as marketing management, as I've done a lot of work in setting up golf outings, both locally and nationally. So I could bring that to the committee, and I think it would be, I really would enjoy
working on this task.
You need to become two-time champion at Scituate. Widows Walk here.
I didn't mention that.
And I see the other ones. I'm not seeing the championship yet at Widows Walk, but.
No, not yet. Paul Palm beats me out all the time, and Jim Forsgard.
Questions from the board?
Nope, it's great.
Thank you.
Mom.
Monty, next.
You all know me, don't you?
Next.
I prepared some very brief remarks, some of which has already been covered.
Sure.
But I think some background is important since I've been involved in this thing a bit now. In 2014, when I was a member of the EDC, our then town administrator, who wasn't big on committees, suggested that the EDC ought to get involved with Bob Sanderson and try to work with him on some marketing ideas. The result of that was a marketing plan that we developed. I think all of you have copies of it. If you want more, I'll go over to Staples and make sure you get. Since then, Bob and I have been working really to make a case for a better facility. The widow is 22 years old, and she is in great need of help. We all know it. It's been covered before by everyone in the room. The primary use is golf, but recreation is also a very big part of it. I think this gets missed sometimes. For example, we have dog walkers, we have fishing, young families that go over there. I see them all the time. We have restaurant patrons, we have winter activities, and could have even more winter activities if we had a better facility for that in terms of the parking area. And we even have an Easter egg hunt. And the people that show up, it's amazing when I go by that golf course and I see all these people, and I'm afraid they're going to ruin the parking lot. We have a number of groups who have given us formal support in writing for repairing the parking lot and the frontage. And they include the EDC, the Beautification Commission, the Course Foundation, the Scituate High Golf Coach, the Scituate Harbor Merchants Association, the Council on Aging, the Recreation Commission, you know about that one, Sean, because we made a pitch to you, the Chamber of Commerce, and a petition signed by 96 golfers and others who want something to happen. I don't think there's anyone in this room, including you on the board, and our new, thank God, town administrator, who disagree. It's all about getting a plan together, as you mentioned, and executing it. And we're past the point where we should talk about it, and hopefully with the committee, we can now make the next step happen. A few years ago, Bob and I put a lot of time into preparing a presentation for the CPC. A lot of work went into this. Basis being that it's a recreation facility, CPC money should be available for recreation. It was turned down for good reason. They felt the money should come out of the Golf Enterprise Fund. We need a formal plan, and I think the core to the plan is, number one, to fix the storefront, the place that says, come play here and don't drive by because you think the golf course looks like the parking lot. We have certain clubhouse improvements. We don't have to rebuild the thing. It could be modest, but they are needed. We install the new irrigation system. The money's been approved. And we make some modest course improvements, which could all be handled by IGM without great expense. The course is in good shape. I'm talking about modest improvements, nothing major. I personally view this as a very important investment to protect probably the most important recreation asset we have in town. It can be financed through a municipal bond. We can do it in phases. We could do the parking lot and the frontage in one phase, a 10-year bond. It probably cost us about Actually, I know what it would cost, I've already researched it.
No, that's okay.
It costs $136,000.
I know you've done your homework, Monty, and I only say that
Enterprise
because
fund.
we've got,
Or we could do a longer 20-year bond, but that's something for Nancy.
that's what we're gonna put this committee to do, to figure out and get an idea, because now it's sharpening the pencils and making it happen.
So I guess in closing, we're either in the game or we're not.
You're in the game.
I think everyone in
Everybody
this-
here is
I think
gonna be,
everyone
somebody's
in
gonna be in the
this
game.
room And most of
Right.
our town residents are in the game. They just want the game to start. I have one question. Will the committee have some kind of a budget to work with when it comes to developing, getting appraisals done, getting design work done for presentations to public meetings and also to the board and also on cable television? I'm not talking big expenses, but there ought to be some kind of a budget to cover some of that cost. Since we're new, we're kind of like the Shellfish Group, only with a golf course. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And as far as costs go, I'm sure Jim, who is going to be obviously involved in this, is going to ensure that if there's a needed cost or an expense, we'll be able to deal with it, and certainly with the enterprise fund, because that's available.
One thought I had listening to.
But again, it depends on what the cost is. I'm like, we're not be buying,
I'm not talking
dinners
lunches.
for this meeting and everything else. I'm like, that's not happening.
But one
We'll figure out.
thought, you can't put all the people on the committee, but there might be, you pick the committee and then have an advisory group that works with the committee.
I think, my hope is this, for everybody who's interested, obviously, some of you are going to feel disappointed that you're probably not going to get on it. I mean, it's just a matter of numbers, unfortunately.
20 people, 7 of you.
I hate to say it, and, maybe we could make a mistake and should have put somebody on and to not put somebody on. All I can ask is this: if you're interested and you're passionate about it, you got to go. I mean, that's what I would do. I would go if I wasn't on this board. But I mean, it's just one of these things where you end up saying, if you're passionate about it, I mean, I'm very interested in the course and trying to improve it and figuring out, and I know everybody up here who golfs, I'm like, there's so much potential with it. So anyway, I really implore you to go. Any questions from the board?
Just a comment to Monty. Thank you. 3 years ago, I think you
4 years,
to me.
4 years and 12 days.
Should have been done 16 years ago. Should have been, a long time ago. Should have been
Yeah, I know.
one of the biggest
Thank you.
assets the town has, right, for sure.
Any other?
Thank you.
I will make copies of all of this available to the committee if I'm not chosen. If I am chosen, they're in trouble.
Well, thank
If
you.
you are chosen, you still have to make copies.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Teresa, if I can have you come on up, and then Stanley,
Best for the last.
Eric, William, and I know I don't want to, I'm like, can we pull up another chair for Andrew? That's okay, might as well. All 5 of you?
Said you were bringing food, that would have been the right
Let's see, is it just the 3 of you? Am I missing? So I know I got Teresa on. Stan, and then? William, okay. So Eric Raymond, Andrew Rosenau? Okay. I'm going to start with the lady. Ladies first.
I'm amazed. When was this golf course put in action?
1996.
When?
1996.
96. I moved here in 1963, and I brought 6 children with me. I moved on 6th Avenue in a $10,000 house, and I remodeled that one and 2 more besides that. 17 years I lived on 6th Avenue, fought with Mr. Goulson because he wouldn't pick up the mess up the top of the street. And I haven't heard anybody talk about, I'm not a golfer. I'm a lady that likes to have a clean yard. And I go by that by the Driftway every day, and I look at the front of that golf course. I say, how can they play golf here? And the front of it is such a disaster. I walk it, and there's bottles, and there's cigarette things, there's junk all over the front yard. There's signs that fall down in the street. They don't even look pretty. I don't know how people can. I've had lunch there, and it's fabulous, but I'm not a golfer. How come nobody in the committee talked about cleaning the place up? This is what I done with Stockbridge Road and 6th Avenue. I was on the beautification committee for 10 years. And I just don't understand how, I haven't heard one single gentleman here talk about the front yard of that golf course.
I think they have, Terry, actually, they've mentioned about the curbside appeal, which really means that it's not just the parking lot appeal, it's kind of like, as soon as you
It's a
start going
disaster.
down, it's kind of like improving the whole length of the driftway. And I will say, I'd love to see a maypole put up at the
My
golf
maypole,
course. So we can
put
see
my
a
maypole up down there
okay.
too? I can do that.
But I think that is certainly one of the higher priorities, because I think that might be low-hanging fruit. I'm not sure they'll figure that out, because that's
Well-
one of the discouraging things when people see it, if they're looking for, they might take a look at that and say, jeepers, this
I
thing's...
think you people should really think about it, because it is a disgrace. I mean, it's a beautiful golf course, but it's a disgrace out front.
That's what we're doing, and that's what's going to get fixed, and it's a gateway, the Driftway's a great gateway to the downtown and to the you know, and this is, like I say, it's a diamond in the rough that needs to be shined. So,
Well, I'm right in there with you to clean it up, because
I'm happy to
it's a
say,
disaster.
use your photographs, because what you've done on Stockbridge is absolutely beautiful, and I drive by actually that way in the morning and the evening now, because, you know, you're right, I don't want to see the front of
Thank
the
you.
golf course, so prefer to see
Let's
yours.
make the golf course look like it too.
Questions from the board?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stanley?
Yeah, well, like everybody else in the room, I'm a golfer. I was here when Driftway was built. I've been playing there for 20 years. Since I retired, I've been playing there a lot. So, my wife plays, I play, we both have memberships there. We care a lot about the course, and we want to make it better. When I saw, Aaron, that you were trying to get this committee going, I said, well, maybe that's our time to do this. It's something I'd like to do, but I really do care about Widows Walk. It's a great course. I bring friends in from out of town. They all love it. It is a disaster. I look at some of the other golf courses in the neighborhood of Bad Vintage, Crosswinds, Old Scotland Links, who always started with, you know, the starter clubhouse. They've replaced them all now. They've got beautiful clubhouses, and they're doing very well. That's exactly what we need here.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Questions?
Well, yeah, what are you bringing to the committee?
Well, it's the passion for wanting to make the course better. When I was in business, my business experience was a lot of it was in purchasing, so I understand bidding. I understand how to put them out, how to receive them, how to compare them. So I have some business experience that I could bring, and it's just basically, I'm a golfer. My wife is a golfer. I know a lot of people at the course now, we've been spending so much time there. And so I think it would be good to have perspective of another golfer and my wife. I'll bring my wife to the meetings.
Well, thank you.
2 for 1.
Any other questions, or?
No, thanks for asking that, Tony.
Mr. Ridings?
Yes, I want to go on record that I don't think Widows is hard. If you put the ball in the fairway, greens in regulation, you're going to score. But, but that being said, I'm in,
I think those are fighting.
I'm in agreement with everyone who spoke early. You know, there are some issues. I've been at Northeastern University for 30 years in the Operations Facilities Division, in landscape maintenance, building maintenance, utilizing office space, event space, you know, so forth and so on. Passionate golfer. I love the staff at Widows. I have a great respect for Bob Sanderson. We've become friends over the years, and lots of conversations about this. And I just want to be part of the process to bring Widows to the wow factor. You know, at Northeastern, we live by the fact that we want someone, when they walk into our campus, it's like, wow, I want to go further. As everyone said, you go into our entranceways at Widows and it's like, oh, and and they do, they have the perception that that's what the course is like. And the course isn't. They do a great job. I love the course. I've been playing for 20 years. And, I'll make it short. I would just love to be part of this process to bring it to the next level. So, thank you.
Thank you. I don't keep it straight, even when I use my short irons. But I have to tell you, and Tony can tell you that, and Sean can tell you that, even more, and Jim, who I golfed with recently at a Foss event. But I love the course. And you hit the nail on the head. The course is superb. I think every single hole is memorable. It's different. It's not the same. You can have a lot of golf courses that you go down, you come back, go down, you come back, par 4, par 5, whatever, par 3, but they're all kind of blah. This course has every hole, really it's unique. And my feeling on it is that I think it's the best course in Scituate, period. And I think it's one of the best ones in the South Shore. And I just, I hate using the word municipal because it's really not a municipal course. It's really the way it's treated and the way it's set up. It's like a private course. But the benefit is, it's the town's. And
I consider it my private course.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say one thing. Everyone that's come up here today is passionate about that course. I mean, those guys are there every single week. I'm there probably more than I should, coming from my wife, but I look and it's like, hey, she knows where I am. So, but yeah, everyone that was here, I think they have that passion where we want to bring it to the next level. We really do, and it's a great asset, so, but.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can we all go home now?
Let me ask, any other question from board members on this?
Just a comment I might have for everyone in the room, left in the room, everyone, has seemed to say the same thing. So how do, and I'm not asking for an answer from you three, but certainly when you walk away, and how are you gonna go about it? Seems like it's the, obviously the parking lot, the clubhouse, so, with the money we have, with the revenue we have, do you borrow, do you pay as you go, phase it, a few people said, makes sense to me. I do recall that was just like John said earlier, there were a set of plans, that's just the initial, to get us going. So what do we do from here and live within, like Tony said earlier, there are a lot of needs in the town. So what do we do to keep this going forward? Thanks for staying so late, everyone. Appreciate it.
So we will be making a decision at our next meeting on the 18th. So we'll have decisions for all of you. And again, thank you for coming. I know it's a long night. I appreciate your patience. All right.
Welcome, have a good night.
All right, so that concludes our 8 o'clock interview session at 10:55.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's take a look. We got new business, so we're going to talk about the annual special town meeting warrant, which we just need to open. Then we need to vote the annual town renewals, which should be very quick. One-day liquor license approvals, one, that should be quick. We're skipping the board appointments. We need to discuss the solar array.
We have to do.
Quick vote.
It is, so
30 seconds.
Can we make the appointment on CPC, because they have a meeting next week?
sure. I have no problems with that.
Is there one applicant, Tony, for one spot?
Yes.
Was it- Great.
Would you like a motion, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Chair? if there's any?
No. Let's make a motion for the applicant for the CPC.
Oh,
Move to appoint Skylar Chick to the Community Preservation Committee for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye. All right. So let's get to, it's really a vote to open the 2019 annual and special town meeting warrant. If somebody could get to that.
Move the Board of
page.
Selectmen open the warrant for April 8, 2019 annual and special town meetings.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All
Oh.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to the discussion vote of the 2019 Town Scituate Annual License renewals. Let me get down to
Move
it.
the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following restaurant all alcohol license for 2019. Hook and Harvest, Jamie's Pub, Mill Wharf Restaurant, O'Callaghan's, DBA The Voyage, Oro Restaurant, Riva Restaurant, Rivershed, Scituate Tavern, The Barker Tavern, The Galley, The North River Grill, The River Club, and TK O'Malley Sports Cafe.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following restaurant, wine, and malt licenses for 2019, Cosmos Cafe and Untold Brewery.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following retail package store all alcohol license for 2019? Harborside Wine and Spirits, Reynolds Package Store, Scituate Package Store, Stillwater's Wine and Gourmet LLC.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor? Aye.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following retail package store wine and malt license for 2019. 7-Eleven, Mulaney's Fish Market, O'Callaghan's Package Store LLC, Sand Hills General Store, and the Village Market.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye. Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following club all alcohol licenses for 2019? Hadley Country Club and the Scituate VFW Post 3169.
And the next page.
As well as Scituate Country Club and Scituate Harbor Yacht Club.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to,
I just abstained from the,
Ms. Canfield abstained, so it's a 4-0 with 1 abstention.
For the club.
She owns the yacht club. Oh,
move the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following club wine malt license for 2019, Scituate Racket and Fitness.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following common vicular license for 2019? China Gourmet, Cosmos Cafe, Cersei's Grotto, Coffee Corner, CP's Wood-Fired Pizzas, Dad's Place, Dribbles, The Driftway Dunkin' Donuts, Egypt Country Store, Harbor Dunkin's, Harborside Wine and Spirits, Hadley Country Club, Hennessy News, Hook and Harvest, Jamie's Pub, Lucky Fin Cafe, Maria's Sub and Pizza, Mary Lou's News, Mike's Scituate Harbor, DBA Sam's, Mulaney Fish Market, O'Callaghan's Retail Package Store LLC, O'Callaghan's DBA The Voyage, Oro Restaurant, Quench Juicery, Reynolds Package Store, Reva's Restaurant, Rivershed, Ronnie Schoen's General Store, Sand Hills General Store, Scituate Tavern, Scituate VFW Post 3169, Scituate Country Club, Scituate Harbor Yacht Club, Scituate Package Store.
Motion.
Scituate Racket Fitness, Stillwater's Wine and Gourmet, the Barker Tavern, the Galley, the Mill Wharf, the North River Grill, the River Club, the Village Market, TK O'Malley's, and Untold Brewing.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following entertainment licenses for 2019? The Galley, Hadley Country Club, Hook and Harvest, Jamie's Pub, O'Callaghan's doing business as The Voyage, Riva Restaurant, Rivershed, Scituate VFW Post 3169, Scituate Country Club, Scituate Harbor Yacht Club, the Barker Tavern, the Mill Wharf, the River Club, TK O'Malley's, and Untold Brewing.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye. Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following Class 2 license for 2019? Driftway Auto, Inc., McBrien's Diagnostic Repair, and Scituate Shell, Inc.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
There are 4 ayes, 1 abstention with Mr. Harris.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following Class 3 license for 2019? Ray's Repair Shop and Ryan Allen LLC.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's 4
And I'll abstain.
and 1 abstention.
Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the following septage disposal license for 2019? All Town Inc., P.F. Spencer, Ronaby Inc., DBA K.R. Anderson Pumping Company, and Spirito Environment Services.
Motion by Ms., strike that. Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Will the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the bowling and electronic games license for 2019, right?
Yep.
Thank you. Scituate Bowlaway.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris,
Seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to renew the movie theater license for 2019. South Shore Cinemas.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by
Second.
Pick one.
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, could I just clarify, Sean, did you abstain on the septic disposal licenses or no?
No.
Okay, just wanted to
I
check.
might have just nodded off. Sorry.
Oh, my God, this just does it again. I'm sorry. I've lost. Is that the last one? Because it keeps going back up.
That's the last one.
All right.
If I could just say a quick thank you to Allison Richmond, who was new to our group really in the last 6 months, and all the work she did
To put this
for the
together.
annual licenses, which is quite an undertaking.
Yeah,
And all
yeah.
the businesses for getting their stuff in on time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone awake? Yay.
All right. Sorry, I got to move along. All right, next is a discussion, vote, one-day liquor license approval for tailor-made bartending at the Gar Hall on December 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. Is there a timing on that, or no? Specific timing?
6:30 to 10:30.
So the motion is to read 6:30 to 10:30, Mr.
Move the
Vignani?
Board of Selectmen approve a one-day malt liquor license to Tailor Made Brewing for an event at the Gar Hall on December 13th, 2018, from 6:30 PM till 10:30 PM.
Second.
Perfect. Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we now have a discussion vote on the solar array affidavit. So what's going on here is, it was handed out to you in your packet, but it appears to be that the people who have the solar array are refinancing, and by refinancing, the bank or the lender is looking for them to sign an affidavit, and I'm looking for it right now. Jim, do you have it handy as to?
It's a simple affidavit that says they're still in good standing, they haven't changed it, done any work. It's been reviewed by town council and by the council that did the solar array project for us to begin with. Forget
It
his
should be
name.
right on your desk.
Yep, you'll see it here. Town is lesser of the land, the project is on. Actually, that's the policy for the refinancing of the project, the town company requires the plan to apply. So in order for them to refinance, they're getting title insurance, or title insurance mandates that this certificate be signed by the owner, who happens to be the town, and that's what this net metering power sales agreement and site lease agreement estoppel certificate is.
And financially, all the monies are paid and all that sort of stuff, Nancy? Yeah. Motion?
Please.
Move to execute the solar array commercial owner affidavit for First American Title Insurance Company and the net metering power sales agreement and site lease agreement estoppel certificate.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any other business now, are there any liaison reports that we want to get into? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next one. Correspondence, why don't we put off correspondence to the next meeting, because it's 11:05. Is that okay by the board?
Yes.
Fair enough. Approval of prior minutes, we should probably do that.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting held on November 20th, 2018.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by,
Second.
second by Ms. Curran, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstained. I don't think I was here. Was that the last meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
Are there any other than that? Okay. Does anybody want to say anything, just briefly, otherwise,
I just want to say, hey, it's First Friday, this
Yes.
Friday, and
Right,
being
right.
Christmas time to support our local merchants. And there's a new really exciting pop-up shop down there, Johnny O's, and our first time we've had men's clothing down there, so I'm kind of excited. So get down and
So
shop.
Tony's
I think it's
wearing
good.
First time you, what'd you say?
men's clothing?
Men's clothing down the harbor.
You're excited because there's
Well,
men's clothing
I
down
can
in
go
the harbor?
shopping,
wall?
yes.
Are you new in town? What about Gates?
You're gonna up your game.
I
I
said
was gonna say,
down in the harbor.
there used to be
Yes,
a men's
used to be,
clothing store,
yeah.
Gates.
Gates.
It's a
John gets a lot of his
Years
clothes at
ago.
Sylvia's.
You asked for a quick comment. I'm here to promote local business.
I've seen
The
Tony
Harbor
and Sylvia's.
Association
Yeah.
has a packed schedule, so come on.
Yes, so come on down Friday.
Yes. And there's the other.
The other thing is that, in case you haven't heard, the boys' football varsity cheerleaders band, they won the Super Bowl, the state championship, which is phenomenal. We are going to invite them to come in at our next meeting, so we'll have a presentation. But I want to single out one person in particular, and actually another, and that happens to be Cam Stone. Cam, you should pan the camera on you, because he's our videographer. Cam had gotten up, and both him and Ted Good, and did like a, I guess you could say segments during the whole entire game, pre-game, during the game, camera angles. In fact, I was watching the replay of the game, and I could see, I think it was Cam with the camera in the end zone, kind of close by.
Yes, he almost hit me.
And he almost got hit, and also during the halftime. So I want to shout out to Cam and also Ted Good thank you for doing that, and well done, okay? And if it's on YouTube, I think, is it also posted on our website so that people can see it on SCTV?
Probably.
Well, it better be, because I want to see it on there so we can see it. But anyway, I just want to shout that out. But we will have more to say about at our next meeting, and I just want to throw it out there. So.
Is the 8th when Santa comes to the harbor too?
Oh, yeah, Saturday. Santa is coming to the harbor.
11 a.m.
Is it 11 a.m.?
No, I'm sorry,
I think it's
it's,
like
I think it's early.
yeah, no, I think
earlier,
it is.
isn't it like 9 or 10?
Well, it's
No.
definitely Saturday, this Saturday.
This
Saturday.
Saturday, but I'm pretty
Get there at
sure
8
it's
o'clock and be
6 to
ready,
10.
that's all.
I'd be there, yeah.
7.
If it's nice and warm out, go get some
Yeah, well,
bagels from,
the entire
oh.
agenda, yeah, the entire agenda can be, listing of activities is on the Harbor Business Association's website and Facebook page.
Remind me about CP's Pizza. Well, I'll say no. CP's gave out free pizzas to all the players and the cheerleaders. I thought that was a really nice thing.
It's
One
really nice.
free pie. They got a big pie, and I'm like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. And I have to say, for business, and I'm not saying there are other businesses that haven't done things, but I happened to see that, and I was like, shout out to Chris Patrick. That was well done. Very nice. All right. Seeing that it's 11:10 and that we are now moving on to the next item, which is executive session. I, the chair, declare that the Board of Selectmen will move into executive session to discuss the deployment of security personnel or devices pertaining to the Scituate Police Department. That's the reason why we're going to executive session, and it cannot be held in a public meeting, because if it were to be discussed, it could have detrimental effects, disclosing sensitive information about security and personnel to the people who don't want to have known. So I'm declaring that, and as a result, the board will not reconvene in open session. We will adjourn out of executive session and then hopefully get home by midnight. That being said, then I would accept a motion at this time.
Move that the Board of Selectmen move into executive session to discuss deployment of security personnel or devices, Scituate Police Department. That's it.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Danahy?
Yes.
Ms. Curran?
Yes.
Ms. Canfield?
Yes?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Vignani?
Yes.
Thank you, folks. Good night.
Good night.